Good. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. To the Madison Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of December 19th, 2024. Please come to order. We have a couple of public hearings scheduled for this evening, so I want to take a few minutes to review the process for public hearings in the current hybrid format of our meetings. During the public hearing, I insist that we treat each other respectfully, do not interrupt, and follow the required structure of the meeting. Everyone will be given a fair opportunity to hear, review, submit, and comment on the testimony and evidence the commission will use to render a decision. All speakers must be recognized by the chair before being allowed to speak. As a reminder, we on the commission are here to listen and ask questions of the applicant. We should refrain from conversations with attendees. And I ask that all cell phones be silenced during the meeting. The steps for conducting a public hearing are as follows. Step 1, the applicant will be invited to present the application, explaining to the commission and others present what is being requested. The applicant or staff will share all application materials on the screen as needed. Comments of town agencies will be read for each application if there are any. Step 2, commissioners will ask clarifying questions before speaking. Each commissioner will be recognized by the chair. Step 3, attendees will have an opportunity for clarifying questions and comments. Anyone who wishes to speak must raise their hand and be recognized by the chair before they speak. For Zoom attendees, please raise your hand through the Zoom platform and wait to be called on and unmuted. According to Connecticut land use law, cross-examination of persons testifying is allowed, but cross-examination of commissioners is not. As this public hearing must be recorded, attendees will state their names and addresses before asking their questions or making statements. Step 4, the applicant will have an opportunity to address any questions or concerns raised by the public or commissioners and must be given the opportunity to speak again without interruption. Once the public hearing is closed, the applicant is free to leave or remain for the balance of the regular meeting, during which the commission will try to reach a decision on each application. Each applicant will be notified in writing as to the decision of this commission and has a right to appeal to Superior Court if desired. Decisions of this meeting are available the day after the meeting by calling the Land Use Department at 203-245-5631 after 9 a.m. All actions taken tonight by the commission will be by roll call. All commissioners and staff will identify themselves for the record before speaking. Seated this evening tonight are members Bob Reinhardt, John Duza, Andy Rubin, myself, Carol Snow Chair, Mike Bugda, John O'Connor, Jeff Downs, and our town planner, Aaron Mannix. This meeting is live streamed on YouTube and will be made available on the town website for viewing, and the town planner will now read the legal notice.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Notice is hereby given that the Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, December 19th, 2024, beginning at 7 p.m. in Meeting Room A, Town Campus, 8 Campus Drive, Madison, Connecticut. This is a hybrid meeting, and attendees may also join via Zoom webinar through either the webinar link or call-in information below. The webinar ID is 915-8196-6735. The password is 452138, and the call-in number is 646-558-8656. The following applications will be heard. Number 24-42, 155 New Road, map 60, lots 9, 10, and 11, Zone Plan Development District. The owner applicant is Hammonasset Commons, LLC, site plan review modification of previous approval to construct 46 residential units, an accessory common building, and associated site improvements under Section 32, Plan Development District. Current proposal includes construction of 72 residential units, accessory common building, and associated site improvements. Application number 24-43 for School Street, map 38, lot 138, zone R2. Owner applicant is the town of Madison. It's a special exception application per section 3.4B and major village district alteration for building alterations and site improvements related to the conversion of the former Academy School into a community center. Application 24-44, 8 Meeting House Lane and 10 School Street, map 38, lots 136 and 137. Also zone R2, owner applicant is the town of Madison. This is a site plan modification for each parcel and a major downtown village district alteration for associated site improvements related to the conversion of the former Academy School into community center. Copies of these applications are available for inspection in the land use office. Further details on how to participate in the webinar are posted on the Town of Madison website, www.madisonct.org. All written correspondence can be submitted to the Land Use Department via email to landuse@madisonct.org. Dial 203-245-5631 for assistance. Dated at Madison, Connecticut, this 25th day of November, 2024. Carol Snow, Chair. This ran on the source on December 5th, 2024, and once on December 12th.
Thank you, Erin. And I want to apologize. Bob O'Connor is also joining us here via Zoom from Washington. Bob, sorry, didn't look to my left. I was introducing everyone. So with that said, the first item on our agenda is 24-42. That's 155 New Road. Could I have a motion to open this public hearing? Reinhardt, second. Mike Mugda, any discussion? Favor?
Okay.
All right, public hearing is open. Invite the applicant.
Good evening. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. My name is Marjorie Shansky. I'm an attorney representing Hammonasset Commons LLC, the owner of the property and applicant this evening. With me are Mr. Ron DeGennaro, who is a principal of the LLC, Brian McAvoy, professional engineer from SLR Consulting, Michael Diskowski, an architect from Ray Sullivan's group, architectural group. Fiona Flynn is joining us by Zoom, and she's an associate traffic engineer at SLR Consulting, who, with traffic engineer Dave Sullivan, authored the current traffic reporting for this proposed development dated October 25th, 2024. The commission will remember that we're here on a modification. We were here at the beginning of the year with the detailed site plan review for the residential development on what we refer to, and we refer to it because it is, on the north side of New Road, having been here previously for the landing of the PDD and the detailed site plan for the commercial side of New Road on the south side. And you approved the residential development with an effective date of January 18th, 2024. At that time, there were 46 residential units and accessory common building and associated site improvements pursuant to Section 32 of the zoning regulations. We're here tonight with a modification, the details of which Mr. McAvoy will share with you shortly. From a zoning perspective and in accordance with your authority in site plan review, the modified application continues to meet the standards and be in accordance with Section 232 of the zoning regulations. The modified site plan and the increase in the number of residential units reflects the heightened interest in the marketplace of the availability of smaller units than previously presented and with first floor primary bedrooms, without materially altering the approved development footprint, again, as Mr. McAvoy will explain. Now showing 72 dwelling units, the resultant development will have more affordable units to maintain the 10% voluntary affordable unit offer of the applicant. There will now be 8 units at 80% AMI for 25 years and subject to an affordability plan, a draft of which had been previously provided to the town planner at the time of the original approval, and which will be amended to reflect the increase in units. The applicant met with ACA in November and December and has received its support. Architect Diskowski will share some of that information with you and show certain alterations, minor alterations that were suggested by ACA. The traffic reporting is in the record, again, including this updated October 25th, 2024 letter, and Fiona Flynn is here to respond to any questions you may have. The commission approved this detailed site plan earlier in the year upon a finding of consistency with the requirements of your regulation. I would like to mention, and Ryan will also talk about our receipt of a letter from Connecticut Water Company, commentary he's received from the Health Department about the suitability of soils for the subsurface sewage disposal and other contact with town officials that he has had. I have reviewed, in anticipation of this hearing tonight, the breadth of my file on New Road, both north and south, which goes back 2.5 years to the spring of 2022 when we began to study the project, and which was subsequent to the amendment of the zoning regulations by this commission to adopt section 32. The initial traffic report was dated August 1st, 2022, and it was based on study anticipating residential development on the north side and commercial development on the south side. It looked actually at 47 residential units at that time. In February 2023, SLR submitted a supplement or an updating of that report in connection, I believe, with our initial site plan of the residential side of the street. And now for the purposes of this application, we have the October 25th, 2024 reporting, which is a 74-page report that re-examines updated data and traffic counts and still comes to the same conclusion that the proposed development does not have a significant impact and alters no level of service category that currently exists on Duck Hole and New Road. So I don't know how usual it is or how frequently the commission receives this sort of continuous sort of traffic review that goes on for both the proposed development and the evolution, let's say, of proposed development. But this is a substantial body of evidence supporting the conclusions that Mr. Sullivan and Ms. Flynn made. We've seen the town planner's staff report and are pleased to see that she finds the same conformity with the Madison zoning regulations that are reflected in the application and that we'll share with the commission this evening. The modified proposed site plan intensifies the availability of the diversity of the housing portfolio in Madison, which has been a long-held goal of the commission and the town and expressed in your plan of conservation and development. So with that, first Mr. McAvoy, then Mr. Duskowski, and Ms. Flynn, to the extent you have questions of her, and thank you.
Thank you.
Please. Good evening. For the record, my name is Ryan McAvoy. I'm a licensed professional engineer with SLR Consulting. And we have presentation boards that we'd be happy to share with the public and the commission. We also have on our thumb drive, I don't know, Aaron, if it's easier to load that up on the screen. But I'll try to use both to the extent that I can. So what I'm going to try to do for the members of the public, I'm going to try to refer to the same figures on the screen as what's behind me on the boards, and perhaps one's easier to see than the other. But regardless, this first plan you have before you represents the existing conditions of the property. I'm going to refer to this as the property, although right now, technically, it is 3 properties, as was noted in the legal notice for the project. So our site totals about 8.7 acres in size, consisting of 3 properties, as I mentioned, outlined in solid yellow on this particular plan, with north being up, Duck Hole Road on the right, north to south, New Road on the bottom of the sheet. It's a little hard to see on the screen because of the text, but New Road is located on the south side or the bottom part of the sheet. The former CLP Eversource Collier's building is located immediately to the west. I-95 a little further to the southwest in the lower left-hand corner of the sheet. The intersection of New Road and Duck Hole Road is just off the sheet as well. On the south side of the property, south side of New Road, is the commercial portion of the PDD that was reviewed by this commission a few years back. And properties on the north and east side, or north to the top, east to the right, are residential. So the site is largely vacant at this point. It used to house a single-family home, although that's been demolished rather recently historically. And it is mostly in an overgrown state. There is not a lot of significant long-term vegetation going back some 10, 15 years. The site was largely cleared, but it's mostly overgrown at this point. And it is a relatively moderate to mild site topographically speaking, with the grades ranging from a high of 65 in the northwest corner or the upper left-hand side of the sheet, going down to about 29 elevation 30 towards the intersection of Duck Hole Road and New Road. So there is some topography, there is some grade change across the site, but by and large, for a property of this size, it's not dramatic. The site is served by has public water available along New Road. And what we're proposing as part of this present application, yes, is a 72-unit multifamily residential development. Next slide, please. So it's similar to what you reviewed roughly a year ago at this time. I believe we submitted in December of 2023. With access provided off of New Road in the southwest corner of the site, not too far from the entrance exit to the Eversource Colliers building. We will have a looped road. Go to this represents the 2023 plan. If you could go to the combined 2024 combined. I think it's just easier to hit over, slide over because it's got all the PDFs in it. Can you click to the next? You can't scroll to the next PDF. Yes. No.
That's what we had.
Well, we can go to number 2. If you go to number 2.
That's what I was on.
Okay. Try 3. Okay, well that's representative. That's representative of the site plan. Sorry about that. So turn so it's the same sheet so everyone's seeing everything identical. So actually what's interesting is the plan you saw before, the colored plan, represented the site plan from last year. So this plan, as you can see, is relatively similar in terms of the layout, in terms of the access. Our driveway will continue to be in the southwest corner of the site, located in the lower left, with emergency access out to Duck Hole Road in the northeast or in the upper right.
Only emergency?
Correct. And our units are served by a loop road, which will provide essentially 2 ways to get in and out of the site. Internally, with internal circulation to all the proposed units. Our buildings will total, like I said, 72 units, but one thing that's a little bit different about this configuration, about this unit matrix compared to the last plan you had, was the 46-unit development that was previously approved were all 2-bedroom units. This is a mixture of 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units, which will be discussed a little bit more in detail a little bit later in our presentation. But the units will be served by proposed public water, septic systems. All septic systems are located on the east side of the site along Duck Hole Road. Soil conditions on the site were sand and gravel, particularly in the eastern side of the site, suitable for septic systems. And stormwater management is similar to what was approved last year as part of the development, with runoff from the road, buildings, parking areas, all directed to a series of underground stormwater management areas located beneath the parking lot in the community center, which is roughly central to the site, and 2 surface basins, one located along New Road and one water quality infiltration basin at the ultimate discharge in the southeast corner of the property. Again, same design parameters as the last site plan that was approved. We have no increases in runoff from the proposed conditions as a result of our stormwater management system. And also similar to the plan last year, we have landscape screening proposed along the east side of the site, along the Duck Hole Road right-of-way, to supplement a rather significantly large vegetated right-of-way that exists today. It's hard to see on this particular plan, but the actual paved portion of Duck Hole Road is dozens of feet away from the right-of-way itself. So there'll be a significant vegetative buffer just within the state right-of-way that'll be supplemented by pine trees, cedar trees, and other evergreen vegetation. And in terms of sediment erosion control, again, the site's designed in accordance with the 2024 guideline for soil erosion and sediment control, providing for silt fence, hay bales, things of that nature to control runoff, and directed to sediment traps, sediment basins, and things of that nature to prevent any erosion coming into the state or local road system. One thing that Fiona is on the call, she can discuss if there's any questions, but I'm sure there's concern about the density increase. And one thing I'll say about our traffic study and our traffic report is that our analysis using ITE, or Institute of Transportation Engineers data for development such as this doesn't distinguish between 1 and 2 bedroom units in terms of the estimated trip generation from residential dwellings in a multifamily configuration. So while there is a modest increase in the amount of traffic generated from our site, it is conservative in its approach because it doesn't distinguish between a lower bedroom count in a unit. The results of our analysis with the increase in traffic and trip generation is that there's still no change in level of service that you'll find at the New Road Duck Hole intersection. So what does that mean? That means there'll be no perceptible change in delay time for someone trying to exit onto Duck Hole Road from New Road as a result of the difference between site plan from last year and the present site plan. So I'd be happy to go through any of these elements in more detail. I know there's more elements of our presentation we'd like to get through. I don't know if there's any questions of the public or the commission, or should we keep proceeding with our?
Keep going.
Yeah, I'll come back and answer questions later.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go to, there will be a colored site plan. I think, yes, this one.
Hello, good evening. My name is Michael Duskowski. I'm from the Sullivan Architectural Group, located at 129 North Broad Street in Milford, Connecticut. As we have heard, this project is a modification of a recently approved site. The New Road site has a lot to offer, not only for future tenants, but the town as well. After considerable thought and research, it was determined that the original project did not take advantage of providing diversity in the unit type as well as the building aesthetics. The original project only offered 2 bedroom units, and every building looked the same with no architectural articulation, lacking a sense of place for the future tenants. Through research, we found that designing smaller units on the first floor was more desirable for the town of Madison. With that research in mind, the modification to this proposed project provides unique 1 and 2 bedroom units with and without garages, as well as several distinct aesthetics providing a sense of place with community, which will ultimately draw tenants of different diversities. The new modification is meeting a need of housing for the town of Madison. Is looking to offer older families that are trying to downsize the ability to downsize but also stay in Madison. It's also giving younger families that are trying to get into Madison the opportunity to be in town while saving to try and buy their single family home. Furthermore, this modification, as discussed by Marjorie, will offer workforce units to add to the diversity of the tenants of the town of Madison is looking for. So as discussed by Ryan, with the program, the project consists of 9 residential buildings on each of the 2 parcels. So on the screen, north is to the left, south to the right, west pointing down, and then east pointing up. So lot number, the first lot is on the left side of the page with 9 buildings, and then the second lot is on the right side along New Road with another 9. In each of these 18 buildings, there are 4 units. There will be 2 units on the second floor that stack above 2 units on the first floor. With this, there will be 44 one-bedroom units and 28 two-bedrooms, totaling the 72 units and 100 bedrooms. Each building will be a wood frame set on a concrete slab on grade foundation. The buildings are arranged on both sides of a vehicular loop, as mentioned by Ryan, to create a traditional New England neighborhood feel with driveways in front of each of the buildings and sidewalk circulation around the property. So if you can go to the next slide. So with this project, when looking at the proposed modified aesthetics of the buildings, we wanted to create a more humble residential scale with the use of lower eave lines, decorative bays, columns, and accent roofs that were that the previous projects did not offer. The aesthetic of our design enhances the staleness of the previous design and creates a much more enhanced sense of community. If you can go to the next slide. There are 3 main building types for the project, and 2 of these main buildings have different color variations. This allows us to populate the plan, which creates a diversity of aesthetics rather than having the same cookie cutter building. And as seen on the site plan, if we need to go back, the different colors coordinated with which type of building they were going to be. And then if you can go to the last slide. With the use of the 3 different building types in various scale and proportion, pairing up with the 5 different color schemes, a variety of building aesthetics is achieved, creating an eclectic neighborhood for each of its occupants to have a sense of place, calling it home. The solution not only creates a humble living environment for its tenants, but for the town as well, where the achieved aesthetic and communal diversity will have a lifetime of timeless coastal New England charm. Back to Ryan.
There are a couple things I just wanted to point out that I didn't touch upon when I spoke before. With regards to the density, with regards to the unit count, with regards to the PDD, we do comply with the underlying regulations with respect to setbacks, with respect to density. The PDD allows for up to 10 units per acre. We do have 2 properties. We are consolidating from 3 to 2. The northern of the 2 represents half the buildings, and that's at 10 units per acre, and the southern half is about 7 units per acre. Overall, the aggregate density of our site at 8.7 acres is would allow for, in theory, up to 87 units. We're proposing 72. So we are about 15% below on aggregate the allowable density on the property or properties. And one other thing I might like to point out, again, with the unit matrix, as we have now with a mixture of 1 and 2 bedroom units, we have a total of 100 bedrooms. So if we're looking to compare it to the previous plan, that was 46 units at 2 bedrooms. So it's only a delta of about 8 bedrooms overall. So more units, to be sure, but the unit matrix results in a similar bedroom count, and the unit density still falls within your allowable regulation.
Could you also do the?
And then we did receive comments from the ACA, along with the Connecticut Water Company, and the recommendation or the positive referral from ACA did come with some suggestions. One was to try to reduce the size of the parking area that actually, Aaron, if you could go back to our site plan. I think the one that's labeled number 3 might be helpful. So we did have, we're agreeing to, and actually we're showing in this particular rendering, a reduction of 4 spaces in the community parking area right next to the clubhouse, which is central to the site. Their thought process on that was that the size of the parking lot right in the middle of the property was a little too large, and they suggested that it should be somewhat truncated. We're agreeable to that. This rendering shows that. We have not produced plans, that show that, but it's something that we are more than willing to provide. And also they had some suggestions about the variety of screening plantings around that central parking area, which again, we're more than confident and comfortable that we can provide something that's a little smaller in scale than the screening trees that we had previously. With regard to Connecticut Water, their comments mirror largely what they had last year as part of the previous site plan. They do recommend a few more instances where we have hooded outlets on our catch basins, and that all catch basin sumps come with a 4-foot deep feature. Now, the just for the benefit of the public and benefit of the commission, we're agreeable to adding some of the hooded outlets to some of the structures. I tend to not prefer to put them on a structure that's collecting water from several upgrading structures, because the hood does represent essentially a blockage, right? And the ability for water to move through. We certainly are agreeable to having them in the uppermost structures in the system where you don't have a lot of storm flow from upgrading areas coming through. So, and I spoke with Jessica from Connecticut Water about that, and she tended to understand my logic and certainly didn't find it disagreeable. But I certainly can state for the record that we will add more hooded outlets to at least the upgraded structures within the storm drainage system. So again, we're agreeable to the recommendations of ACA. We're agreeable to the recommendations of Connecticut Water.
And then you spoke with Versa.
Oh. And I also did speak with the town engineer. He didn't have any written comments. Thank you, Marjorie. He didn't have any written comments to provide for this. He did mention that there is and continues to be concern at the town level regarding the intersection with New Road and Duck Hole Road. Again, as part of our traffic study, we do have recommendations for how that intersection could be improved. It is something that the developer, Mr. DeGennaro, along with, I believe, the developer on the south side of New Road, have said and stated and continue to be agreeable to working with the town and the state to provide some improvements to that intersection. Recent changes that have happened in the last couple of years have certainly improved the condition, although there still are opportunities to continue to modify that and make it function a little bit more smoothly. So
When you said state, I just want to make sure you're talking about Department of Transportation.
Department of Transportation.
Thanks.
Thank you. So if you do have any questions about that, Fiona Flynn is on the phone. She does have insight as to what our recommendations are. Ultimately, approval for any modifications of that intersection will be under the jurisdiction of the Department of Transportation. But certainly support from the town and support from the developers. I think that would certainly go a long way to helping the state make decisions that might ultimately work to everyone's benefit.
Thank you.
Did you want to admit Fiona?
She is on
Oh,
as a
I see.
panelist.
I just can't see her.
Yeah,
So-
I'll stop sharing.
If you have any questions for Ms. Flynn, I want to say with respect to the agreement that has for the last 2.5 years been out there for both Mr. Horton and for Mr. DeGennaro to come to the table to talk about the Duck Hole Road, New Road, and that intersection with the highway. It's really important to internalize that the issues that exist now are not created by either of these developments, and that the conclusions of the traffic reporting with the levels of service, the peak traffic, the examination of crash data and all of that conclude that there's no impact, a significant impact associated with the ability of the roadways to absorb the traffic generated, low residential traffic generation associated with either side of the development, but indeed the north side. And that's a really important element. It's that we are not creating, but we're happy to be part of the solution. And indeed, it was Mr. Sullivan who, in the initial reporting, talked about restriping that someplace along the way occurred and that we all experience as being a sigh of relief improvement already. And then one more thing before, hello, Fiona, is that the zoning chart that is on the plan set that shows the various standards and parameters of the proposed development, one that I think is somewhat poignant is that and all of them, all, in conformity with your regulations, but maximum building coverage in the PDD is 30%. And in the one of the parcels, they're at 18.2%, and in the other, they're at 24.5%. So the standards are conservative as relates to the development compared to what's approvable in the zoning district. So your questions.
Is Fiona giving a presentation? And I was wondering if it would be possible to pull up the possible design changes for that intersection that we saw, I think, as an appendix in the traffic study.
I do have that pulled up if we'd like to see that. I don't have a presentation. I'm mostly here to answer questions, but I do have it pulled up and I'd be happy to share.
Be great. Thanks, Fiona.
So in this particular plan, north is up. This on the top left portion of the screen is the proposed development in question, and this is the intersection of New Road and Duck Hole Road. Our long-term conceptual suggestion essentially included restriping of the southbound approach of Duck Hole Road and adding a right turn lane, both of which has been completed, as I understand it. Our remaining suggestions would be essentially teeing up the approach of New Road. We found in our crash analysis that there were quite a few collisions that involved people crossing between New Road and Duck Hole Road on the east leg of the approach. And so essentially what we're trying to do is create two separate intersections and eliminate that cross movement between New Road and Duck Hole Road.
I do have a question. I'm comparing this with the plan. I think you're proposing to make the entry onto Duck Hole from New Road at more of a right angle. And so you're cutting off some of that stormwater basin, I think, down there. Am I seeing that correctly?
It doesn't, the two don't rest on top of each other, but our stormwater pond is actually much further in.
Okay.
You have a very substantial right of way at Duck Hole Road and New Road. So what you actually find is that there's some 50 to 100 feet between the physical intersection that you would drive on and where the actual property lines for the respective right of ways are located. So there's quite a bit of distance between where any of our site improvements are proposed and this recommended intersection modification.
And that's state right of way?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, great. Thanks. Any other questions?
I have a couple. I'll just stay on this topic. How do we ensure that a change like this occurs?
It's up to the state.
Because you're right, it's a challenging intersection as it is now. You're not creating the problem, but we're not making it any better. And so this just tonight making a left was a little scary. So I'm trying to understand how we can work to ensure a change like this is put in place to increase the overall safety of that intersection. If it's up to the state, whether we need to talk with them and understand what that path would be.
That would be the town, yes. So the town can serve as a facilitator to, ultimately, the state does need to approve modifications. The town has the ability to look into a little more analysis, maybe a little bit of surveying to get a little more than a concept together, to meet with DOT and see if this is agreeable before sending it up. And then really, I think some of the the nuances of participation from the parties can be worked out, but it could lend itself to grant opportunities as well. In conversations with Dave Sullivan, even this plan is still a Band-Aid fix to the area, and ultimately that intersection is impacted by the exit and entrance ramps to 95. And so the state is undergoing that East Corridor study, and ultimately some type of improvement should happen with those ramps. Yes.
Which is how
And so
far
this-
away from this intersection? We don't have if we could zoom out.
Yeah, it's several hundred feet to the south.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's probably down, like if you could vision where my hand is roughly.
Yeah.
But the on-ramp to 95 south. Yeah, within that.
Keep the pressure on the state.
Right, so the town has had conversations.
Driving across New Road to get to the other side, it's like playing frog.
Right, and I think that was the concept behind this, was to have this island of refuge in the middle to eliminate that crossing of
In
four.
that, you should only be able to take a right there, not go straight across, because it's just, there's too much traffic. And with that business to the south and I know it's not changed, it is exacerbating it to a certain extent, by definition it will, but it's gonna have to be addressed, so there's just too much traffic.
And right, and I think the town has, our town engineer has expressed an interest in moving forward with these conversations, as well as our local traffic authority and the police chief, and the applicant.
The owners, yeah.
So I do anticipate those conversations beginning.
But I guess to Bob's question, we have no avenue to make this happen as part of this proposal.
That's correct. You have limitations with respect to off-site improvements that are not caused by development.
I have another question specific to the traffic study. Okay, so Fiona, this is Bob Reinhardt. So I have a question on, I was going through the traffic study and I'm trying to get my head around the estimated increase in traffic flow. I didn't have the benefit of looking at the previous two studies, so I just looked at this one. And in table 1, it says that the total peak hour traffic in the AM, I think, was 27, and in the PM is 28. So I was interpreting that as meaning there would be 27 cars, 6 in, 21 out on New Road, on the way to work, and the peak hours. Is that?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, that your interpretation is correct.
Thank you. So then I can't reconcile that with 100 bedrooms, 72 units, and by rough estimate, 86 trips in the morning with people going to work. So I don't understand.
Fiona, do you want me to take a stab at that?
Yeah, take a stab, and if I'll corral you if necessary.
Very common question about residential. So the reality about multifamily residential developments is that that people come and go at different hours of the day. In fact, some people, particularly in newer construction, we find tend to work at home. So it's not like everyone works at 8:30 and leaves at the same time. So there is a bit of a spread across the morning. It's staggered. So what you may find in the peak hour, and the reason why we analyze it at the peak hour is because we want to see the impact when the road conditions have the most traffic already. So what you may find is at the peak hour, let's say somewhere between 8 and 9 o'clock roughly, you may find that, while there may be 27 trips estimated from a development such as this, you may have 25 trips from 9 to 10, and you may have 24 from 7 to 8. So it does spread out over the course, but there isn't a dramatic peak the same way you would have in a commercial or industrial style development when you have people coming in for shifts and things of that nature. So very common question, how can you have 72 units? And you're telling me you're only gonna get 27 cars in an hour. But this data for multifamily housing in the ITE trip generation manual is based upon thousands, hundreds, if not thousands of studies of similar style developments. And in our experience, when we actually analyzed post-development, the traffic impact from developments like this, we find that it is rather consistent, in a sense that the numbers that we find, actual data post-construction, is very similar to what we would estimate for development like this. So it seems a little counterintuitive, but the reality is because of the spread out nature of how residential developments come and go, that it's a relatively modest amount during
I understand.
the worst case. Yeah.
Can I have access to some of that report or that data?
Of course.
I find it, because there's 32 two-bedroom units, I'm assuming that'll be mostly small families. Probably 2 people working.
Possibly, yeah.
1 bedrooms, probably a lot of retired people, but maybe half not.
Right.
So half of that's gonna be, even if just 1 person, that's still, I'm getting it, there's 80+ trips. And
And that may be true, but it's spread out over 2,
I
3, 4.
understand that, but I'm questioning data's application to this. I understand the point completely, I do. I'm not challenging you. I'd just like to understand the data a little deeper.
Understood.
I'm not sure what I should look at.
Well, and the reality is that the summary of this data is kind of incorporated in a manual that our traffic engineers use as a basis for these analyses, and their information is based on regression models and statistical models of, like I said, hundreds and thousands of different actual on the ground studies. And what we look to do is we look to target our estimate based on a land use or a category that it seems most applicable to this development. So in this case, we used one for, multifamily housing mid-rise, and there's a series of different choices you can make for residential development, some in a more urban setting, some with high-rise, some with other conditions, and doing all the work we do around Connecticut, this is not a unique style development, and we found that this category, for lack of a better term, is most applicable to sites like this.
Maybe it would help me then to understand the choices made in determining the data set used that would be applicable. You talked about it being where, if it's a multifamily dwelling, it's mid-rise, is there a geographic application to this? You talk about unit developments that are in close proximity to a major thoroughfare, 95, because that's going to change the kind of person who lives there. We're talking about retirees in Madison. Is it how specific, what choices do you have to make to get to that data set, just so I can be comfortable that it fits this? And it's not, thousands of studies are great, but then it gets very much just plain vanilla.
Well, the demographics are very difficult to predict in terms of retirees versus not. But we
I
can,
understand that, but the developer probably has an idea because they're going to price it. And the research that was done to say 1-bedroom units are needed more than 2-bedroom would imply that there's an understanding of the market potential of who's going to buy these. So we should be able to get fairly specific about expectations of who's going to live in the units.
I agree with that. Well, that's the next question. Is that, what changed? Is there a study
That's
that
a question.
correlates to that exists with, you made a decision to move from X number of units to Y number of units. All the other things fit within the density, not questioning any of that. I'm just curious, you referenced data said that there was a need in Madison specifically for more 1-bedroom units and fewer 2-bedroom units. I'd be curious, that surprised me, that's all. I'd be curious to see, is that a published study somewhere? Where'd that data come from? And is there a correlation then
Who do we expect to buy
demographically to the traffic study? Or they may be completely separate, that's I understand, but just questioning.
Gonna put me on the spot, huh? For the record, I'm Ron DeGennaro, Hammonasset Commons LLC, 43 Moon Lane, Guilford. After our last approval, we probably had a list of, I think it was close to 35 people, mostly older Madison residents, looking for smaller units, a rental style unit. Since we started this application, we probably have a list of close to 90, I think 91 of people that have reached out to us wanting to live here. Yeah, and I would say 75% of them are all from Madison. Yeah. That's the best data I have.
No, that's fair. I'm just curious. I mean, you guys, I mean, obviously it drove some decisions, so
Yeah.
I'm just curious if, people speak. Thank you.
And perhaps Fiona has something more to say about this. For the record, it's Attorney Marjorie Shansky. The single-family development pattern on single lots is what, 96, 97% of Madison's housing type, something in the 90s. And so when you measure that against the diversity of the housing portfolio, which is a phrase that reoccurs in your plans of conservation and development, having 1 and 2 bedrooms is the achievement of that goal. With respect to the ITE, and I'm not a traffic engineer, and we have one on the line, but I do have a copy of the ITE in my office, and I have referred to it before because I'm a land use lawyer. Traffic is, no pun intended, from time to time. And I would say, based on, I mean, there are a plethora of categories, and I think that when you look at, or when a traffic engineer, and Fiona can weigh in, that they apply engineering judgment. We're doing multifamily of 2 stories. It's not high rise. It's not single story, single residential. So the aptness of the category is almost intuitive and certainly not counterintuitive. But Fiona, what do you say about that? And perhaps you can stop sharing screen so we can see you. Please.
Sure. Yes. Thank you, Marjorie. I was just going to say that, yes, the data does have specific categories for example, like center city core and urban areas, as well as generalized urban suburban. And we did select a category that we felt most reflected this area, which is the generalized urban suburban, and in fact is the most conservative of the potential 3 categories. For example, center city core, fewer people have vehicles, so they won't be driving. So this is actually a more conservative category. Additionally, there's options for close to rail transit or not close to rail transit, and this is in this case not close to rail transit. So there were several options to sort of choose, essentially take traffic credit, and we chose a land use that we feel is conservative in its approach and does reflect the type of traffic that would be produced by this development. I've heard Dave use this before. He lives on a cul-de-sac. I don't know if anyone else does, but if you were to stand on the corner of your cul-de-sac and there's 20 houses in the cul-de-sac, and the peak hour between 7:30 and 8:30, you're not seeing 20 cars leaving. And that would be true of multifamily developments as well. You're not seeing 20 vehicles leaving all at once. You might see 4 or 5 during the peak hour, and that holds true of residential development. So I just wanted to add that as well. And we would also be happy to provide the statistical data, which again is part of the industry standard, and we feel confident in and would be happy to share in any way.
Great, thank you. And could you highlight what you think that, or from what you've done, the change from the original proposal, the 46 units to the 17 units as far as the traffic flow?
Yes, when you compare the number of trips that are anticipated to be developed by 46 units versus 72, in each of the peak hours, it was around 10 additional trips. So it's a modest increase in the number.
Jeff Downs from on the commission. Do you take bedrooms into account in that?
ITE used to striate between bedrooms and then found that was they just decided to reconsolidate the data. So in this case, it's just based on number of units, and it is a little more conservative in that approach because it doesn't take into account the number of bedrooms. Any more questions?
I actually have excuse me, a question for the architect.
Yes.
I don't know if you could pull up some of the plans, the floor plans of the different units. There's some that I think have one bedroom plus a study. If you could pull that.
Yeah.
Up.
In the consolidation, there should be floor plans to the
This is
building.
related to how many people we're counting. Because I think there are some one-bedroom units, but they have a study which looks like you've left the doorway wide and there's no door on it. So that's what that's what determines that it's a study, not a bedroom. I was just wondering if we crunch the numbers with studies being occupied as bedrooms, or let me also just back up and ask, are these rental units? These are all rentals?
Yeah.
So you would have control over whether someone just goes ahead and frames in a doorway and puts a door up, which is not hard to do. But when you're calling them one bedroom, I just want to make sure that they are in fact just one bedroom and that the studies won't be another bedroom. If there's any assurance you can give us about how to control that.
I'm not 100% sure.
Well, I would just throw out there that it will be all controlled by the owner of the property. So structural alterations, I would imagine, would be frowned upon and not allowable in accordance with their lease. That would be unusual.
I don't think these are the units that have them. But
So this one is a one-bedroom unit with a study. So the study is right here and
Yeah.
the bedroom is back there.
There's an opening there.
That's
yeah,
a 5-foot cased opening.
right. And there's another one that looks like it's a larger study with an opening toward the center, the sort of core of the building.
Up here. Are you talking about this?
No, I think it was another unit, another example, maybe.
There's
Um,
a floor plan.
Yeah, there's
Floor plan,
there's
okay.
3 different floor plans. So if you can go to the next one.
I don't know if anybody else is concerned about that, but
Didn't
what
I?
are we calling?
It's gonna happen.
Talking about this.
One bedroom,
The,
two bedroom.
that's all, it's all actually dictated by building code in terms of what is determined to be a bedroom.
Oh, yeah, there it is with the.
And health code.
And health code as well, and health code as well.
Yeah, which also impacts septic, I suppose.
Sure.
Yeah, there you go. There's another study.
Yes, so this is a 2-bedroom layout with a study. Yeah, so you're talking about this
Yeah,
room. Yeah, so we have them shown as studies. I'm not 100% sure how that can be controlled, but like Brian said, more likely controlled by the owner than from what we can propose.
Of the complex, right?
It can be controlled through your approval as well, because you're approving
condition
a
of the
certain
approval.
number of, I mean, you're approving, what's proposed to you is a certain number of 1-bedroom units and a
Right.
certain number of 2-bedroom units. And when the building permit comes through, you see that a lot in multifamily developments or townhome style development where they're looking for some kind of flex space for office space, but
right.
can't achieve that additional bedroom because of, most of the time, it's health code related.
So-
And the health code does require that 5-foot cased opening,
Mhm.
as well
So
as
you're
some
saying-
other.
But you're saying, Aaron, as a condition, we can say that it must remain
Yeah.
as a study and remain open. I'm sure we can
Remain
do
open.
that. I'm sure the owner has no intention of, walling that up. But I guess the question is, how do you police someone saying, hey, you want to help me split my rent? I mean, it's just
Well-
gonna happen at some point. I don't know how rampant it'll be, but it's probably gonna happen at some point.
How many units have those studies?
Yeah, I believe every unit has a study, if it's 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom.
I think, and additionally, your permits, when you approve a project, you're approving a specific plan set. And so there, when there are modifications to that or number of units or things like that, often the applicant would need to return for approvals to make changes.
If the commission wanted to impose a condition of approval, I think that would be your control. I think it would be, if this were a multifamily housing development on the beach in Fairfield with proximity to Fairfield University, we could have a palpable concern that the scenario you're describing is going to be implemented over time. There's no interest, intention, or adjacent place of, if this were Orange Street in New Haven, yeah, you bet they'll put as many people in as they can squeeze to share that rent. But this is intended to be a Madison multifamily development to provide an opportunity for people to stay in town when they sell their single family home on a single parcel, or for people or, young people to get into the housing market in Madison. So that's the intention of the developer, and I think putting the condition on it. I will say that having a study or another space, that something we learned during COVID, if somebody had a disease that you didn't want to sleep in bed next to, that having another place where you could crash on the couch was also an important option. So, we don't want to make cells here or.
I think also working at home.
Yeah, I just want to say one
is
thing.
bigger.
The main reason we put the studies in there was for home office.
Yeah.
I have sons that are software engineers, they're 27. They've never been in an office. They got their first job after COVID and they've worked from home ever since.
I've been working at home
Yeah.
for 30 years. Yeah.
But also there's no closets,
Right.
even when we build houses, we have rooms like this, as long as we don't put closets in them. And health code says we have to have a 6-foot opening to make them a non-bedroom.
Thank you. Any other questions from commissioners?
Yeah, I have one question, Chair. You should bring up the site plan again.
How did we say that was sheet 3? Sorry.
You go with.
Save you from scrolling.
The idea of the ingress and egress of emergency vehicles around the pathway, there's one radius that looks rather sharp.
Yeah, we have checked it against the fire engine, making the turn. But there's no challenge. I mean, generally speaking, whenever we have any internal roadway system, whether it be in a parking lot for commercial or internal to a residential development like this, having internal radiuses of 25 feet on the curves do safely allow for an aerial apparatus to make that turn without any obstruction.
So they've already approved this.
I don't know if they've seen a truck turning movement itself, but we did. I personally made sure that we can that an aerial apparatus ladder truck, for lack of a better term,
Right.
can make it around these internal movements.
Okay. And I had a question too from Attorney Shansky. Long ago, when we were first doing it, there was some concern about neighbors across the street with headlights. Do you remember this?
I do.
Has this ever been addressed or no?
Well, I think part of it is being addressed with buffering and planting.
Okay.
We're certainly not uncognizant of it and can, keep an eye on it when the designing and the landscaping goes in to ensure that it's been remediated in the best way or mitigated in the best way possible.
And the other part was the exit at the Cole was only emergency. So that was, residents wouldn't exit that.
Right, precisely.
So that was part of the headlight.
Right.
To address
Right.
that issue as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Question with respect to how was the emergency entrance and exit secured? So it's not used on a regular basis?
Gated,
Okay, thank you.
not box. Not box.
You mentioned a 30% coverage is the regulation limit,
30% is the coverage. We are under it.
and you're in the low 20s, splendid. But
On
when I
one
look
part and 18% on the other.
Okay, and so what's included in coverage? Because when I look at that map, it looks like it's more than low 20s% coverage.
Building footprint,
So just buildings, not,
correct.
not driveways.
Right, the regulations specify building coverage as the coverage associated with structures.
Okay.
The town currently does not have a maximum impervious surface coverage regulation. Something to consider when you're
Going
looking
forward.
into your zoning code update.
Take a note for that.
This could be a case study.
I have one last question on the site plan, and just for my own understanding. Buildings 8 through 11 on the far left have some pretty long runs on the effluent pipe.
Yeah.
What are those, are they standard? I assume they're standard, but are you stretching, are you at the limits of the standards or well within the?
Actually, it's a fair question. There are no standards with regard to, so what we have, generally speaking, is that when you have your, what we call the building sewer line, right? That's the pipe that goes from the building to the septic tank. Those in general, you want to keep as short as possible because they contain, well, without getting too graphic, they contain the solids, right? So if you have runs over 75 feet, you're expected to have cleanouts, you're expected to have all these different things in place. But post septic tank, after the septic tank, in theory, as long as they're maintained,
Okay.
as long as they're maintained, it's just liquid coming out.
All right.
So as long as you have pitch, as long as you have slope, there's no limitation on the length of that.
Everything is cleaned out every 4 years.
Yes, and given that this is going to be under a single ownership, I would imagine the cleaning of septic tanks will be probably more regular than most single family homes, I would think.
Thank you.
Tom Murray.
One thing I think we dropped the ball on when we approved it last time was any discussion of sidewalks, public sidewalks. I mean, part of our push is to get more sidewalks around town. Was there a reason why we did not ask for a public sidewalk to be part of this development?
Along New Road, John? Is that right?
I would say both.
Well, one of them is, that's property state owned, that's facing the road.
Yeah. Boston Post Road is state owned also. And we've had a sidewalk requests for the general residents. I mean, that shouldn't be an issue.
Well, I think we don't yet have in town an overall bike and pedestrian plan.
So why would we?
But we have talked, in fact, we've had other developers who come forward and offer sidewalks, even though they're just a short piece of sidewalk in front of a property, I think on Railroad Avenue, that's what we had. Duck Hole, I think we'd like to see bike lanes. I would love to see that. I don't know.
Sure. But the Duck Hole, if you have a sidewalk that goes the length of that, you're literally a few hundred feet from the town campus.
Mhm.
Traffic.
So thank you. On New Road, I don't, you could, if there was a sidewalk there, you could at least get around where, this dangerous intersection is. You can at least walk on a sidewalk instead of on the road. It just seems like it's a glaring omission that we continue to make in some of our approvals. And I would like to at least throw out some discussion of that. I think it's something we should continually push for. I see this as a great opportunity to get a significant amount of sidewalk in this area.
It's not part of your regulations.
Excuse me?
It's not part of your regulations. So I agree that the conversation is a valid one and it is occurring in many towns in different ways, and different towns have adopted different policies and requirements associated with it. But for purposes of demonstrating compliance with the regulations, you don't have a requirement.
I mean, it's in our POCD that we want to improve connectivity and encourage pedestrian and bike use.
And that needs to be brought over into your regulations with a zoning amendment.
And the town is moving forward, just awarded a contract with a consultant to study, prepare a townwide master plan, bicycle and pedestrian master plan. And so I anticipate that will be kicking off at the end of January. But that's exactly.
So right now, we're at the mercy of the developers to offer to build sidewalks.
That's how it's been.
Yep, okay.
But also makes sense for the town to have a strategy and plan.
And a regulation.
Right, rather than just put one with this
Yes.
development.
You gotta start
Impervious
somewhere.
coverage, but sidewalks, you should be making a
No,
list
but the
of
town is working on it.
the regulations.
The town's working on it.
Yeah.
I know it's needed for another time. You just did a huge sidewalk improvement, all up 79 from the center of town, past the bank, all the way up to, was it Woodland?
Yeah.
Yes.
But that was.
So
Town too, right?
it was a town initiated project that was funded through grants.
Grants.
Some of those connectivity grants are funded transit-oriented development. So a lot of those improvements that have been made in the downtown area were funded because of the proximity to the train station. And that particular one was to connect the town's largest affordable housing development to the downtown and allow for that access.
Sidewalk all the way down New Road and then jump over the bridge onto the train.
I mean, I do think that new road is a logical next
Extension.
step to try and connect to the downtown.
Yeah.
And that should be looked at in our plans.
It's not that far.
And perhaps could be tied into an intersection improvement and an opportunity to seek funding in that sense, when you add the sidewalk components in, that does open up some other opportunities for funding.
It's an important safety issue.
My understanding is there is an internal sidewalk in the development.
Within the development, yes. Any other questions from commissioners? Any questions from the public or people attending via Zoom? Yeah, do you want to state your name and address?
It's Bill McDonald, I'm at 61 New Road. One thing that you don't hear too much about these kinds of applications is the landscaping, the trees. Like you take the south side that they already did. Now, most of that was just field. There's some trees, no problem. There's a buffer between the highway and the property. And they came in and they cut all the trees, and hacked them all down. And my son said, and I said to my son, "Was that too bad? They left a pretty good buffer." He said, "No, they're gonna come back." He said, "They're gonna cut every tree that they can." Sure enough, a week later, all gone. There's a little buffer now between the highway. I'm talking about the south side. You know, to block the highway out. The trees were all gone. There were some nice chestnuts in there. You know, does anybody even look at this stuff? And even along New Road, there was a few nice trees. They cut those down. Now, on the other side, on the north side, there's an American chestnut in there, in that buffer zone. And I had some people come up from Hamden Chestnut Society and analyze it. It's I think it was 96% pure American chestnut, blight-free, which is rare. And it's like 100 feet tall. And now, if they're gonna be putting the septic in a big trench, they gotta cut down trees. Does anybody ever monitor, can we save this tree? Can we have some trees here? It's just, they come in, you just hack all the trees down. And so that's my concern, is the trees and the appearance. Like I said, again, like on the south side, they could have left some trees along the road to block some of that up, but they just come in and they hack them all down.
So there are landscaping plans.
Pardon?
And you can refer to the landscaping plans, but you're right, they did open up that south commercial lot for the medical building.
Like I say, in the middle of it, there, no problem, that was all brush and no problem, but there's just a little buffer zone between the highway, would have been nice to have some trees block out the highway, but they're all down. There's just a little one now, it's very narrow. And my concern is they're gonna do the same thing on the north side with these houses, they're gonna just hack all the trees down. And there's an American chestnut, there's more than one, but one big one in there, it'd be a crime to cut that tree down. I'll cry if they do, it really would.
Erin, did you want to add anything to that?
I'll let the applicant, do you want to address
So my question is, are they aware, or is there anyone responsible for considering the landscaping and saving trees? Or they just coming and cutting, nobody even cares?
Well, I can say this about the landscaping plan, about the site in general. Because of the density, the utility requirements, and the fact that this site historically was pretty open. What you're gonna see in this property is the majority of it clear to support the development. We do have plantings along the perimeter, evergreen screenings, things like that, that will help to block or screen somewhat the units in the development. But in terms of the site itself, largely gonna have to be cleared in order to support the development as proposed.
So do you even have anyone who goes and looks to see what's there and identify? She's like American chestnut is like, if you know, is almost extinct. So you just go in and just cut them because you need that, or do you take any?
Well, certainly if there's an opportunity to save trees, you know, there's a cost and there's an effort to do so on the developer's part. So it's not something that they do just out of spite. So if there's an opportunity to save a tree that would save Ron money to keep as opposed to take down, certainly he would do it. I don't know exactly the tree you're speaking about, but in general, like I said, the site, because of the utility requirements, the layout would require the majority of the site to be disturbed.
That's too bad.
You can add to your list, significant tree protection and
There is a group in town that is working on trying to save more trees.
There is a landscape plan for the record that is,
Yeah.
has been submitted with the application as well.
and reviewed
If
by
you wanted to
ACA.
look at that.
And through ACA, yeah. Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Hello, I'm Sharon Schmidt. I live at 64 New Road. And my concern is safety of the street itself. And I have a couple of questions. What time of the year did you actually conduct your evaluation of the street traffic?
I'm going to defer to Fiona on that. Fiona, you can answer that. You're still with us?
Yes, hello, I am. Yes, we counted in June of 2022.
So during a period where there was significantly less traffic in all areas. And
Fiona, I beg your pardon, to that point, there is a factor of additional traffic that is added with the passage of time, and that's reflected in the study. Isn't it 0.75?
Yes, yeah, correct. We did grow the traffic volumes to reflect a future year of traffic conditions. And as far as conducting the counts in June, that oftentimes, especially along the shoreline, traffic is actually higher there with the summer volumes, but we feel that the June counts are reflective of reality.
And what was the rationale for having the entrance and exit only on the New Road side as opposed to on the Duck Hole side?
I can answer that. One, traffic volumes on the street, sight lines, and just general concern out of safety. The Duck Hole Road area has higher speeds, higher traffic volumes. It seemed appropriate to direct most of our traffic to the safer of the two roads in terms of available sight lines and prevailing speeds.
So the prevailing speed is based on the signs on the road.
Well, yes, essentially, you have lower speed limits. You have much higher speeds on Duck Hole. You have much higher traffic volumes than you do on new roads. So it's a much safer way on a typical basis to enter and exit the property.
My concern is, again, the traffic on New Road and the increase. I currently have to cross the street to obtain my mail. And I'm just about at Bishop where there's a dip in the road. And I will have to tell you that no one follows the speed limits on that street. And if some of us do, including myself, cars will pass me and it was just resurfaced, but there were no lines applied. So now it's a free-for-all. So, and I know that's not your concern, but there is a real hazard with the cars going up and down that street. And I question the numbers that you've obtained. It just seems much smaller than what I observe in the morning and starting at the work hours. So I don't know if there's some other statistics that could be run for that. And I do agree with the sidewalks. New Road is an access road between the town. And there are a lot of people that ride bikes and walk their dogs. People from the other condominium area walk down through there. You're talking about elderly people or older people. They're not necessarily going to stay in their houses, in their apartment, their one rooms every day. They're going to be out there walking, which they are now. And I fear for some of those people, really. It is unsafe. There's no sidewalk. And this is going to dramatically increase our traffic. I know your studies say that it isn't, but it is a cut through already. And it is very dangerous for people on that street. And, you know, I welcome to have, you know, other people there, but I think you have to realize that it is not safe to have that volume of cars.
Hi, my name is Amy Dembo, and I live at 68 New Road, and we're relatively new, and so my questions may be a little, basic. One of the things when you were talking about a one-bedroom with, and I think that's really awesome, were you assuming one person was living in that one bedroom?
No.
Two people were sharing a
One or
bedroom.
two.
Okay, so when you were doing your count, you didn't assume one person for one bedroom. Okay, thank you so much. Two cars, yeah, but definitely two cars. So that was one of the things, you know, when we brought up about, bedroom counts, but how many car counts are there? I got a little confused. I'm a CPA, but I'm really terrible at numbers. So how many more cars are you anticipating now with, you know, the one bedroom having two people, two cars, two bedrooms could even have three cars? I just appreciate this, but in my head, I'm just trying to get to number of cars you're anticipating, and maybe it's even how many parking spots, including the garages, are you anticipating in that property? That helps me sort of get my head around this.
So each unit will have two spaces, whether it be parking spaces immediately in front or garage spaces. And there'll be a total of 44 called visitor spaces around the site. So there's a total of 188.
So
Now,
so 188 cars, okay, sometimes. Parking spaces.
Yes.
Right, so, yeah, so, and thank you so much, that's very helpful, I don't think I could have added that in my head. That was one of the things as I'm thinking about, working from home, but just that volume. And I do appreciate this, and I am a day late and $1 short, and I understand the whole issue with the duck view, and that's a road, and that's a really busy road, right? I totally get that. What I think about is right now that intersection, and I so appreciate that the town is really looking into kind of making that safer. I use that every morning. I'm taking a left onto Duck Hill, and I do struggle with that. And I do take my time. One of the things I'm thinking about is with that in and out only on new road, and I'm not sure where the medical building in and out is going to be. And boy, oh boy, they could be pretty close to one another. And what I'm struggling is that in the future, once the medical building is there, how many cars are we gonna have sort of entering and exiting out of New Road, whether you're living there, whether you're going down the street to where I live, or going into the medical building. So as I appreciate the thought process now, I'm just thinking about it a little bit future once that medical building gets there. And that's when I was thinking, boy, that's a lot of volume going in and out in that one small spot. And even if you're gonna fix the road and you're gonna put in the lights, and boy, I appreciate that so very much, I'm thinking you're gonna have a lot of volume there. So of course me, going, well, if you move the in and out of New Road, and you use the Duck Hill, and absolutely you may need to have lights and do everything right, and I know cars are busy there. I do appreciate, if you could sort of make that traffic not all be coming in. And the last thing I want to say to you is we are so happy in Madison. We love Madison. My husband and I came from West Hartford, Connecticut, and I can only tell you how many fatalities there have been recently in West Hartford. A dear friend of ours was on a bicycle. He ended up, he's in a bad shape. A woman and her dog were killed. West Hartford has seen a significant amount of traffic and cars. And I will tell you, there is distracted driving. And so I very much appreciate new sidewalks coming in. When I walk my dog, I am petrified. But as you're thinking about this, I know I'm a day late and $1 short, but if the entryways could have been on Duck Hill and with that medical center, I just think there's going to be a lot of congestion there. And I appreciate you, and thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you. Do we have a plan that could show where the medical facility, I think aren't they almost across the street from each other?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Fiona, would you be able to pull up, I don't know if it can pull up the medical office. I mean, it might take a minute to find, but.
Yep, I can look for that.
The first one doesn't show.
No.
And you did take into account in the traffic study, also the occupants in the medical facility, right?
That's correct. Yes, we do take into account the medical office being open in our traffic impact analysis. So that those volumes are reflected in our study.
The beauty of having the same engineering for
both sides of the street.
Just out of curiosity, does the study get into depth as to, I see the increase in traffic, but the direction of which way that traffic goes?
Yes, there's a paragraph that
Okay,
talks
I see
about that as well.
Thank
We figured there was.
Madam Chair, there's a woman, she's raising. her hand.
I just,
I'm just
while you're looking that up, this is Sharon Schmidt again at 64. Did you say that you're now looking for a medical building to be built?
No, that's been
First
approved.
started? I understand it's been approved, but is there an occupant?
Oh, it's not the subject matter of this evening. I have no information.
Thank you.
I have the approved site development plan for the medical office building. Is that what you're looking to see, if it's proximity across the street?
Yeah. I
Yes.
just wanted to confirm where they are, where the
I can show you that roughly. We don't have the other development, but it is over on the west side of the
West
property.
So it's roughly opposite of our driveway.
Right. The only landmark is this sort of
Just for
sidewalk.
for comparison purposes, that existing driveway that's reflected right there is shown at this location on our plan. So our driveway location is roughly opposite of the medical office building.
I just had a question about, what about the buses? Where do you expect a bus to
Can you
stop?
just identify yourself and your
Hi,
address?
Paula Steer, 48 Deborah Drive.
I'm sorry, could you repeat your name, please?
Paula Steer,
Thank you.
48 Deborah. Since there will be families, where is the bus stop going to be? And it's a gated drive, so the bus will not go into the development?
School buses?
School buses will stop, school buses we expect will stop on New Road.
On New Road, where, like, there'll be 4 or 5 of them stopping, if, you know, just if there are students, we know there'll be students there.
Yeah.
Is there enough space there? Is there a place where the bus will pull in? Is there would there be mailboxes at everyone's door, or is it at the front entrance? Where would the post office, would the mail lady or mailman drive over to? Just I'm thinking of this stopping during the day, and mostly for the children. Where are they going to stand waiting for the bus if there's no sidewalk?
I expect that buses will not enter in the site. It's not typical for school buses to enter into a private development. Just like any stop in town, the bus will have its lights on, stop sign out. Children enter and exit right at the street, just like any other location. I would not expect that the bus would pull off the road if there's an ability, but you know, the law is pretty clear about stopping at a bus stop. And, you know, certainly, I don't think this would be different than any other residential development in town.
And the mailboxes, are those? I do have a community mailbox center.
I think we have that envisioned in the community center.
Yeah.
The community building.
Right where the road turns in.
So it's on your property.
It'll be on the property, yeah.
Yeah, it'll be on.
No, there's not gonna be 72 mailboxes on the road.
I'm so sorry, were you gonna put the diagram up to show the different, where the driveways
They're
were?
across from each other.
They're exactly across from each other?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
That's consistent with the master plan that was reviewed as part of the original plan development.
Questions in the back?
I had a couple of questions. Barbara Yeager, 205 River Road. We talked about affordable and workforce housing. My understanding is they're different.
No,
Yeah, I thought workforce housing was for residents in the community, for workers in the community, school workers, firemen, policemen. No, same thing?
same thing. Workforce housing is a euphemism that makes people feel better about affordable housing, from my experience.
Is, and the lease length, is there any restrictions on lease length for the build of the units?
No.
Okay. So
Well,
we could do a
there's not gonna
weekly,
be-
we could rent
No,
for a
no,
week.
no short-term rentals.
Well, what's short term? I'm just curious because we have summer rentals here, so I didn't know.
Yeah, no, this is
They're gonna
intent.
be at least 1 year. Yeah, all leases will be at least 1 year.
And I looked online, I tried to because I missed the first approval. I didn't see anything, a review by the Conservation Commission and nothing about all the stone walls and what we're doing with historic resources on the property. And I did not see them reused in the site plan, in the landscape plan, which is usual when I do one. I'm a landscape architect. In some case like this, I would put the back on the property. I don't see that happening. And I'm wondering, the buffer planting, you talk about a lot of vegetation along Duck Hill Road. Well, Eversource just cut it off. So I'm just curious, I wouldn't count on buffer, that right away being a buffer planting. And I'm also concerned about the, excuse me, I have a cold, the white pines and the Picea abies that's being planted. It looked like it's closer than 25 feet to those power lines, which Eversource did not like. And then I see septic in the setback, which I guess it's allowed, but it seems awful close to the property. Is it?
With regard to septic systems, they're permitted to be within 10 feet of a property line. Like a minimum leaching system spread is not required. It's a technical term, but the bottom line is the locations where we show our septic systems are consistent with the health code. And we do propose buffer plantings linearly along the property line. There will be, there is vegetation within Duck Hill. There is some that, you know, obviously that gets trimmed on occasion from overhead power lines, but we're confident that we're able to support the landscape buffering that we show on our property within the site. We can't control what's in the right of way, but we can control what's on our property.
So is there any report from the Conservation Commission or anything about the stone walls?
No, and in fact, on the application, I don't think you checked the box for historic resources. We don't all go out and check the properties, obviously, so Seems to be an oversight if there are stone walls there.
It shows on the survey.
And also, while I'm talking about the application, if you could correct the Neck River basin.
Yes, we're advised of
It's
that.
still there.
It was in an earlier generation and came from someone other than
Yeah,
my office, certainly. But yes, we'll correct that.
thanks for your points. Anyone else? Yes?
Yes, please. Thank you. My name's Jerry Cox. I live at 135 Duck Hole Road. We're the closest neighbor to the northern end of the property there. And I appreciate the time. I appreciate being on the Zoom call 2 years ago with the initial application. Our concern was really just privacy, and I see on the landscape plan, you're showing a 6-foot fence on that northern border. We were hoping there'd be plantings there. I don't see that, of arborvitaes or something along that, since we're so close, sharing that same northern border. So I don't know if there's any thought of that.
We can supplement. We can supplement.
And the other thing I just noticed today was the original plan, the buildings were about 30 feet away from our property line. I see they've moved to within almost 15 feet of our property line. So I just had a question as to, you're showing that northern border that we share as a side setback of 15 feet, and yet you're showing the commercial western side, you're giving them a 30-foot setback on that western side and calling that the rear. To me, the front of the property is New Road. That's your entrance, that's your address. We're the rear of the property. We should have that 30-foot setback, which was on the one 2 years ago. Thank you.
The last plan that was approved is represented by this rendering here.
I apologize. It may not have been a setback. I apologize, but the building seemed a little farther away. Now it's within 15 feet.
So we've applied a side setback because the frontage of the property on Duck Hole Road, the way the regulations are defined, the frontage is along, the side setback is perpendicular to the frontage. We believe we've applied the regulations accurately. And it's consistent with how the plan that was approved last year in terms of proximity of the buildings to the property. We can provide additional screening arborvitaes. We'd be happy to do so. Ron, is there anything else to be willing to provide in terms of, fencing and arborvitaes would certainly be available.
So just to clarify, the front of the property you're saying is the Duck Hole Road?
It's the front, yeah, that's the frontage of the property.
Even though the entrance is New Road?
How does that work?
It's frontage on the.
If I may. These buildings were farther away when we talked 2 years ago. They're much farther away from our property line. Now these buildings are within 15 feet. I think it's semantics to call this frontage and not the rear. How is that the rear of the property?
There are actually 2 front yards, and that is not unusual for corner properties. And then a side and a rear.
You actually have a choice of addresses.
I don't have my regulations with me, I'm sorry.
I don't either.
You provided the color rendering of the 2023 layout as well.
This is
This
the
is
previous approved plan.
Yes, okay, so that's what we're looking at, the same thing, yes. Which has the same distance.
Right.
That's
Correct. And
Any other questions? Yeah.
Hi, my name's Maureen Westcott, 57 New Road, and I'm wanting to bring up again about the sidewalk along New Road. So what are the odds that a sidewalk would be put in? What's the ramifications to get one? And how do you even?
This isn't really a zoning question at this point because we don't have jurisdiction over that. But Erin, maybe as town planner, you could answer.
sure, we do have a bicycle and pedestrian advisory committee. Would be a great starting point. And again, involvement in our master planning that we're beginning in the new year to develop the town's master plan for where the most desirable areas for that pedestrian connection would be. So I would encourage you to keep in touch with me during those processes or even attend an upcoming bicycle and pedestrian committee meeting.
They have vacancies on their
They
committee?
serve, that I don't know.
That's what happens.
And not to commit you just right away. But they do serve in an advisory capacity to the town, advocating for sidewalks in particular areas. And they've done quite a lot of work
I've seen it.
studying different areas of town and reaching out, getting public
It would be a
feedback.
great asset, especially what we put out earlier, but then, more people moving in, renting, and they'll be wanting to walk to town. So
I agree. I think the road should be,
Yeah, that'd
looked
be
at.
terrific. Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Yes.
So Eleanor Griffith, I'm at 82 New Road, and it was certainly well said before, my concerns and the like. Do you ever revisit something like the Duck Hill entrance? I say this because it's with real trepidation that we cross from New Road, obviously, cross over that Hamanesset extension in the mornings and the evenings, a couple times a week, and it's close calls. And how could this new development, which obviously is going ahead with, coincide with work with the state and the feds with I-95 so that all this comes together? I would love to see another traffic light right there so that we safely can cross over, or even to come to town hall tonight. You wait and you wait and you wait, and then you zip, and all of a sudden there's another car coming.
Yeah.
So it's not immediately your problem, but 188 cars, it's still a lot. It's gonna add real traffic going both directions.
And that doesn't include the cars coming in and out of the medical. The one
And that
goes.
doesn't, which I'd love to have a number on that.
And in additional commercial vehicles, Amazon delivery, all that, it's just a lot that, we're there every day, we see it, and I'm sure you do too, but it feels more than what we hear.
Thank you. Yeah. We love sidewalks, we walk our dogs, community, we love being, and we want to see it work well.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
One more. Roseanne McDowell, 61 New Road. Now, before, a while ago, when they were trying to get a hotel on that site, there's an aquifer there. And now with this new proposal of all these units, what's happening with that? And the sewage and whatever on, because they weren't allowed to build that because of the aquifer.
I believe in the past there was an effort to do some sort of an assisted living or medical facility that didn't reach the level of a local application. It was just pursued by the owner years ago. But we have submitted this application to the Connecticut Water Company, which maintains the community well, I think located on the other side of the Hamanesset River, thereabouts. And they have reviewed it with respect to their guidelines, their expectations for development within the aquifer protection area. They came up with a list of recommendations, some of which I'd say are, rather benign, try to limit the amount of chemical application of salt on roads and things of that nature. But they certainly have looked at the relationship between our leaching fields, our septic systems, and their resource that, obviously the community uses. And they didn't raise any concerns or objections with regard to that element of the site plan.
Was that with the old number of homes on there or with the new?
Both. And I would say, again, getting back to sewage generation rates with septic system sizing, because of the distribution and nature of the unit count. I mentioned earlier that there's only 8 bedrooms more for this development than what was previously approved. Septic system, sewage generation, design standards are based on bedroom count. So this is only a small fraction more than what was previously reviewed and approved. In fact, the health code's been revised in the past year. It actually downgrades the amount of flow coming out of multifamily residential uses, just because the nature of water usage and nature of population tends to be lower per bedroom than single-family residential homes.
Thank you. Any other questions? I think we have any on, do you see a hand raised?
I don't see online, just Okay, now I do.
Yeah, we do. Looks like Nancy.
Nancy Ongley,
Yes.
identify yourself for the record, please.
It's Nancy Ongley and I'm at 60 Horse Pond Road. So I'm at the other end of New Road on that little section of Horse Pond that's not the connector. So very familiar with New Road, travel on it a lot. And really just, I guess, for the benefit of the committee, wanted to just express my concern as other people have about that intersection. I've been behind the rear enders that have gotten hit. It seems to, and this was one of the things that I guess hadn't been brought up, and maybe it was me on a night where there were no lights there, but it seems very dark. So when you come off 95 there and you're trying to cross over, I know where the street is, but I don't know if there's any lighting. Obviously, there's lighting with the project, but it's very dark now and there's people confused that can't figure out where they're going. So kind of like an accident to happen. So I was wondering about lighting and whose responsibility it is. I assume it's state or, maybe with some town nudging. And the second thing is the sight line, if you are, looking to go, well, either left or right, but that sight line from cars coming from the north is pretty bad. So I don't know if that can be changed at all. And the other thing is, obviously, all of that is way worse when it's summertime. So, but I guess my primary thing was to just express the concern. Also, the darkness it seems like that should be able to be fixed. You can't even really see the road. You can kind of see the sign. And then my other question on the traffic study was, is there an assumption that leaving the project, you're going to head towards Duck Hole, or are you going to turn right and come down towards Horse Pond? Do you make any assumption about that when you do the traffic study?
Yes, to answer the question on the traffic study. So we do distribute the trips based on volumes that are currently out there. We also do journey to work census data, and I do believe that we had a few vehicles that were, I guess, driving the back way, but it was a very small number. So some will turn right out of the site onto New Road and towards Horse Pond.
Well, the New Road residents probably know better than I do, but to me, depending on where you're going, if you're going into town, you would probably be better served coming down New Road to Horse Pond because you avoid the light at Hammonasset and you avoid the light, any traffic and lights on Route 1, and you can kind of come into town the back way. So that was all. I think you'll, again, I guess that remains to be seen, but I just wanted to comment about how bad that intersection is. And I hope against hope that something can be done because it's very dangerous. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would make the observation, Marjorie Shansky, that on page 3 of the October 25th traffic study in the phase 2 site generated traffic discussion, there's a distribution of percentages of which way people go when leaving.
Thanks. I don't see anyone else with their hand raised online, Madam Chair.
Okay, well, I'd like to get a little feedback from the commission about where we go from here. We just opened this public hearing tonight, so we have time. Is that correct, Erin? And I think we've had some important issues raised. However, you asked for certain data, just so that we can feel comfortable about the safety issues, because that's obviously, I think, the biggest factor we're hearing is the safety at the intersections most critically, but also all along.
But I think it's where we end up each time we have a traffic study, that the assessment is of the road handling the volume. but there's seldom an assessment of the impact to safety or potential hazards created by the volumes. The roads are big enough and wide enough and long enough, and the sight lines are fine, that you can get on and off, and the roads are designed to handle that, even though as they currently are, they're rating of D in one intersection, which is the worst I've seen so far.
I beg your pardon, could you repeat what you just said? I didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was saying that during, we often have traffic studies that assess the ability of the roads to handle the volume of additional traffic that will be added to the area. But we've never had traffic studies that try to assess the safety. Now, this one looks at accidents on the intersection, which is fine. There's a statement saying that it could be better from the changes, but 1 year is probably not adequate to assess that because you don't know what weather patterns and anything else. So we need a little more time to assess if the line, the striping changed the dynamics of the traffic there. But we never really have an idea of pedestrian safety or bicycle safety, the impact to the residents that use the road for non-vehicular transportation, and safety. I haven't seen one yet. I'm not sure how to do it, but it's always the question that comes up. And in particular here, since there's no sidewalk, it is dark, there's no lighting, the road, the sightlines are maybe adequate at the driveway for the development, but may not be adequate further down. It was actually safe probably on the road when the road was in bad shape because you couldn't go very fast. So I'm not sure what to ask for.
Enjoying that.
So I'm not sure how to do that. So how to ask that, an assessment of that nature.
Well, and we've had
What's within our rights to ask of the developer to address. Because I know part of it is town, part of it is state, part of it is federal.
We've
That's
also had
one.
feedback from the police chief, the town engineer, public works director, and town operations director, who are concerned about the safety
Yeah,
issues.
it's not gonna get better. It's not their fault. It's
Yeah.
fault. Not the developer's fault, it's the way it exists. But we're not going to make it any better by adding more cars. And so I'd love to be able to have time to explore, how do we coordinate the state, someone said, coordinate the state, federal, and town activities,
Well, and Aaron,
push forward on a change, what the timing might be.
there have been,
That doesn't,
are there meetings with Department of Transportation planned where some of this will be hashed out? I mean, I think we've talked about how we want to keep the dialogue going. I think the developers are keen to participate in that.
Since 2022, we've been expressing that.
Right.
Right, so how do we put more pressure?
Yeah, or how do we get a little closer to answers about that?
that would be coordination through the engineering department and the police chief and the applicant. I think the town has to initiate those conversations and look, I think as we discussed before, what's demonstrated in the traffic report are existing conditions that are noting the existing challenges at this intersection, and that you have the report of a professional traffic engineer that says this is not going to have a significant impact or change the level of service.
Right.
So you can't require an applicant to execute any improvements off the property to accommodate an existing poor
I
condition.
understand that.
So I'm not sure what additional, I know
Well,
you
I
asked for
guess,
the backup
The other part too is
data for this,
we are
but I don't know what else you're
confounding
looking
things
for.
because this is already approved, so we can't go back and change what was approved. So the entrance exit is approved, number of houses are approved, structures. The only change has been requested in where they're located, the shape of the road, and how many people, the number of units.
How many units?
So I think specific to the application, what I'd like to have provided to us is understand someone brought up the potential for that there may be existing stone walls, understanding that from a historical perspective. Are they of any importance? Do they need to be preserved, reused, or whatever it might be? So we don't seem to have an answer to, do they exist or do they not exist? So we need to understand that, I would ask. The privacy, well, I think that just a better understanding on the landscaping plan, on the privacy plantings along the back, actually on the north and east sides. I'd ask for clarification on what the front of the property actually is, whereas before it was approved as laid out, if the homes are moving closer to the property line, I'd just like to understand, I tried looking quick in the regs, I couldn't find it. So where in our regulations or state regulations does it say this is the front?
For defined front.
How is that defined? I
It's
don't
in
know.
the zoning regulations.
Yeah, I couldn't find that. That specific to the property, that's it. Question. And then just understanding your path forward, trying to get the roads approved.
I would just like to, if I may, add on the observation, sort of joining what Aaron's comments were, but responsive to yours, Mr. Commissioner. First of all, there is a sightline analysis exceeds the COT guidelines for 40 miles an hour, 10 miles over the posted speed limit. So it's not looked at the posted speed limit. It's looked at with people and acceleration. But the obligation, because the traffic report says in underline on its conclusion, and this is the third successive traffic report, analysis of the new traffic that is estimated to be added from the proposed phase 2 development fine, and phase 2 is how they were calling the residential side as opposed to the commercial side, finds that it will be accommodated with little impact. Sort of resonant to what the town planner was saying, the developer doesn't have an obligation to make it better.
True.
They have an
I
obligation
understand
to not
I
make it
understand.
worse.
I understand that.
And-
Also,
But we have also, since 2022, expressed our willingness to be at that conversation, and that conversation puts these traffic engineers at the table. So, that we're 2.5 years later and the conversation hasn't progressed.
yeah, I understand that. But it's my own, so I understand. When you say that the traffic studies show the service levels will not change, to me, the service levels, my understanding is that you won't have to wait any longer.
Correct.
So that's all it's saying. That's not addressing the safety concern, which is, I'm not sure how to address measuring.
Understood, but in the
That's-
crash data and in the discussion about the improvements that even the restriping
Right.
has made, it may be theorized that there is an improvement that would be beneficial for all of these residents of Madison. And DOT needs to be the progenitor of that conversation.
Well, I know I would feel more comfortable if we had that conversation with DOT, just, I'm sorry to be going around in circles, but
I understand,
it feels like it's on the verge, but we haven't gotten there yet. And Aaron, because we have had other town officials express concern and town staff.
I don't have any written comments from town staff.
Have they expressed concerns about the development impact on traffic? Or
Yeah.
just about the intersection?
Both, say.
What Mr. Russo said to you?
Yeah, he reiterated he didn't have any written comments to prepare. Just that they'd like to see. This is hearsay. I don't want to speak for Mr. Russo, but he essentially said that modifications to that intersection would be preferred.
If the commission would like the town engineer to provide comments, that's something that we can request.
That would be great.
That'd be great. Great way to start.
Yeah.
The application has been referred to the town.
Okay, thanks.
But his comments are not going to solve the broader question that falls within the jurisdiction of DOT. With all due respect to whatever he puts forth.
You cannot hold off on making a decision on an application for this matter.
Because of DOT, right?
You are bound.
It's not part of our concern.
You are bound by the statutes in reviewing this application. It is a site plan modification, which is an administrative review by the agency to the point of failure to act within 65 days is an automatic approval. So that you have to run your
And
timeline.
I think I delineated fairly well what I saw as the changes, which is the change in the shape of the road, the change in the shape of the buildings, the change in the location of the buildings, the change in the number of units. Did I miss anything?
No,
Essentially,
all
So I
in,
understand exactly what you're asking us to approve.
all in conformity with the zoning regulation, yes.
And then from that, there were 4 requests, the buffer plantings, stone walls, privacy plantings along the buffer on the north and east side of the trice, and the, pretty much, and clarification on the front property. So those are the 4 questions I have before I feel comfortable moving forward.
Can I ask one more question? In the original plan. that we
Could you
approved-
please identify yourself again for the record?
Sharon Schmidt, 64 New Road. In the original plan that we approved previously, there was an entrance and an exit on the Duck Hill Road. That is now, you're saying only emergency.
It was emergency in last year on the approval, and it was emergency.
We approved emergency.
Yeah, that's what I remember. It was exactly a year,
Thank you.
just under a year.
Just under a year.
Just,
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we've got a list of
I mean,
requests for new information, if we could, based on the feedback we got tonight. And we do have time to keep this public hearing open.
You would have to close the hearing, 65 days is January 11th, so the commission would have to close the hearing and make a decision by January 11th. So you do have one meeting, the January 2nd meeting, where you could continue this.
New Year's.
I was really hoping to cancel that meeting.
I think,
I don't know if I'm gonna make it all.
I know about other
Well,
commissioners, but I feel more comfortable also going back and looking at the regs again, regulations again, just to make sure that
I agree.
we're doing our job.
Are there specific regulation questions aside from the setbacks?
The setback is a
that I
big
can
one. I think the
assist?
setback is the biggest one. It's been raised. Yeah.
that should be pretty easy to answer. That should be pretty easy to answer.
You can, yeah, we just couldn't find it tonight and it's 9:05.
Yeah, no, I'm saying.
So is the commission comfortable with keeping it open, keeping the public hearing open until January 2nd?
Are you all available on January 2nd?
Can't say that now.
If not, you would have to request an extension. You'd have to request an extension, and if the applicant is not available, that's something we should,
Maybe we can log in from Jamaica. Wow, it's only the 19th of December? Feels later than that.
It
doesn't
feels
it?
like this is a long
The
one.
next meeting would be the January 16th meeting. But that would require an extension granted from the applicant to get to that date.
The only thing outstanding is the setback. Did the setbacks change?
It did not change?
It did not.
As the building shifted a little bit, we slightly realigned our division line, or property line between the 2 different sites. But beyond that, the relationship between setbacks, side lot lines, rear lot lines is unchanged.
I am led to understand, but I can say with no authority, that there may be people at SLR on vacation on January 2nd or
Not
still.
January 2nd, but up until then.
Oh, well.
Holidays are upon us.
I never got an answer about the conservation commission.
The answer was no, we haven't been in touch with them. But then again, we raised the stone wall question that you had. And it's not shown on the application. I don't think it's shown on the plans.
You showed it on the
Survey.
existing conditions plan, shows the stone.
And there's some on the west side, maybe is what I saw, that are not affected.
The property boundary with Eversource has a stone wall that'll be unaffected. There is one internal stone wall that's along roughly the boundary of the internal property boundaries. That's part of the site. Which would be affected by the development.
That's on the northern end.
Mostly, yeah, the northern side of the site.
So was, is there a
Can we meet on
preference
January
for?
2nd?
Apparently we can.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Merry Christmas.
Gives us time to.
Need a
Happy New
motion
Year.
to continue the hearing
Could I have a
to
motion to
January
continue the
2nd.
hearing until January 2nd? Second? Further discussion? All in favor? Okay, so we'll continue on January 2nd.
Thank you, Fiona.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Fiona. Okay, next on our agenda, we have, it's actually a by.
You come down the road.
If we could take conversations into the hall, we have another public hearing beginning.
Thank you all. Let's step outside.
Ken Frost, Ken, right?
School Street, map 38, lot 138, and 24-44.
And Tom.
Meeting House Lane and 10 School Street, both of which are the renovation for a community center. Fire break.
Let me get.
Hold on, let's go outside.
Discussion, right?
It's gonna take a couple minutes for the break.
A 5-minute recess? I'll pause. We're just taking a 5-minute recess then.
And you have our drawings?
Yeah. Right now. I think we're gonna approach these together, all 3 applications. Because they're,
Yeah.
wait, to duplicate.
It's one project, right?
Yes.
Right, and you can just, you can clarify where the property line.
Wow, the room cleared out.
Hi, Tom.
Hey, guys.
Yes, it has.
I guess they didn't really want to hear what you had to say, Bri.
We're just taking a quick 5 minutes, well, roughly 3 minutes right now, and then you can begin.
Yeah, that's great. I'm actually under the weather this evening, so I'm gonna let Brian do the heavy lifting.
Thanks for being on Zoom.
I'm gonna let Brian, and Brian.
Yes. Also Brian. Landscape architect is Brian. Brian Trustin. Yeah.
I hope we're coming on the home stretch here. Need more agenda items as well.
Good. Chapstick.
Thank
Can you read the drawings?
Which sheet would you?
I guess you can start with one of the landscape sheets.
So I've got.
No.
Survey.
Yes.
This does not have, did you have color renderings for
We didn't.
ACCA or no?
Oh, we presented to ACCA,
we've been approved by them. I didn't include the color renderings in this presentation.
I can hold them up.
If you had the ACA presentation, that would have all the renderings.
Would you like that?
Yeah, that might be easier. Sure.
Let me pull that as well.
This one has all the civil drawings. We need to discuss this as well.
Yeah, the most recent ACA presentation.
Yeah, that's good too. Do you want to start with that one or?
Yeah, this might be easier. We'll start with this and then go to civil afterwards. Ready? Well, this one, well, next one, that one, we can start here.
Second. Just need to start recording again. Are we all?
We're all back.
We're all set. Okay.
Yeah.
Bob
Okay.
O'Connor's still here too.
Yep.
Need a motion to open the hearing.
Oh, great. Could I have a motion to open the public hearings? Can I do both at once, Erin? 24-43 and 24-44?
Yes.
Like to say?
I'll move it.
I think I heard Bob O'Connor. Further discussion, all in favor? And you can get the next one.
Let's just go on.
Keep moving. Great.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm Brian Park with Q&M Architecture at 195 Scott Swamp Road in Farmington. I have here Brian Panico, Cole Civil, Kalmar Carey, also with Q&M is on the line, and Brian Kent of Kent Frost, who is the landscape architect.
Hello.
So this project is the conversion of the Academy School into the Madison Community Center. It is the existing building from 1921 with a 1936 addition to the north of it. The overall footprint of the building isn't significantly changing. We are renovating the envelope. We're providing new windows, new roofing, new doors, masonry upgrades, stuff of that nature. The existing building sits half a story below grade, so all the entrances require stairs to get to either the lower level or the first floor, main floor.
More contemporary standards. More contemporary standards.
Yes, so part of the project was to create a new accessible entrance with an elevator, so anybody can access all portions of the building. What we're doing is this bay right here is where the 1936 addition meets the 1921 original building. We are removing that area. It was originally a classroom. We're removing that, creating a new grade level entrance, and that'll be top to bottom. So it'll have stairs going down to the basement, stairs to the first floor, and then the elevator that can get everyone to the all three floors. There's an existing parking to the south. We are providing a new promenade that'll connect that parking lot to the main entrance and really define this as the primary entrance of the building. The promenade will be impervious pavers. There'll be some overhead catenary lighting, a lot of landscaping and site benches. We'll dive into that a little bit further down the road. And we are redeveloping this area. It's currently a parking lot, and we are providing as much parking as the site will allow, without invading onto the baseball fields to the north of the building. So we have gone through ACA. This is obviously the ACA presentation. And we received their approval as well as the Historic District Commission. We've satisfied all their requests. So can you go to the next slide, please? So this is site lighting. It'll be all new site lighting. One of the comments that we received from the Historic District Commission is all new site features need to be more contemporary in nature. They didn't want historic replicas for site furnishing, site lighting, stuff of that nature. So they've reviewed our proposed fixtures and accepted everything. There was an existing, there is an existing playground in this area. We are providing all new septic for the building. Brian will present that in just a minute. But because of that, we are relocating the playground to adjacent to the building. This will bring it closer so kids aren't running around through the parking lot, getting back and forth to the building. It's a much safer location.
So in orientation to the building, where is that being placed? The
Playground?
Okay.
Yeah, so this is currently parking.
Okay.
So it's being closer to the building, easier for parents to oversight. With the parking, we are providing a drive lane here, so easy drop off and pick up for parents or anybody else. And we are providing a walk here with some bolliard lighting, so people parking along the street here will be able to identify the main entrance as their location where they need to arrive to. Next slide, please. So we are doing all native plantings throughout the site. Some of the existing trees and stuff will remain, but all this will be just because of the new septic that we're having to install. That will need to be replaced with new. We are providing a raised planter here with a display tree and some site benching along the edge there to really define this as a plaza for gathering and other informal activities. Some trees along the parking will create a small buffer between the parking and the play fields. In the middle of the parking is a rain garden to help mitigate the water control. Next slide, please. And these are just some of the examples of the site furnishings and fixtures that have been presented to ECA and Historic District Commission. And the impervious pavers below. So we've coordinated the colors with both committees. We decided not to go with a red just because all the buildings are red. And, it would be too much. And we also have bike parking against the building. Next slide. So this is the existing building. You can see here is where we will be removing a portion of the building for the new entrance. There are two basement levels. They're actually not connected. You have to go up to the first floor to get from one side to the other. So there will be a connecting corridor between the two. There's an existing courtyard here. We will be infilling that to the first floor and making a new lounge area. Can you go to the next slide? This is the main floor demo area. Once again, the area being demolished is through here. Next slide. And third floor, or second floor, sorry. And this is the area. Next slide, please. Go.
Next slide.
Yes, please.
Sorry.
So on the roof, there is an existing penthouse. It is somewhat of a safety issue. It's not accessible and somewhat of a fire hazard. That will be removed as part of the project. Next slide. So some historic photos of the building and surrounding context. And this is the area which will be removed for the new entrance. So all the properties on the building or adjacent properties are owned by the town of Madison. Currently next door is Youth and Family Services. The Historic Society is on the site, and that is Memorial Town Hall, and Deacon John Graves is across the street here. Excellent. So the new entrance, okay, so this is the basement level. So, you know, it's a little bit funky how the orientation is because this is a half story below, but these will be stairs down to the basement and a connecting corridor to the connected two halves of the building. The program will include moving the Madison Youth and Family Services to the building, as well as Madison Beaches and Rec. Most of the typical rooms of the school will have similar uses to the previous school. The classrooms will become community spaces for multifunction activities. The gym will remain a gym, the kitchen will remain a kitchen, and the recital hall will remain a recital hall. You can go to the next slide. So here's the grade level entrance with stairs to the main floor or stairs down to the basement, and the elevator, which will be a double-sided elevator, so everyone can exit the building. Next slide. And this is just the upper floor. So this will be more Madison Youth and Family Services and multifunction spaces. Next slide. And the roof plan, so we are infilling where the courtyard is for the lounge area. We're trying to, as best as possible, centralize the mechanical equipment. So it'll be as far inboard on the building as possible to eliminate sight lines. They are quite large, but we will have roof screens enclosing everything. Next slide. So on elevation, full window replacement, downspout replacement, just basic envelope facelift. Can you pan or zoom out if possible?
Yes. You want the lower level?
Yeah, you can go to the next slide. Yep. So an elevation, this is the 1921 building. And this portion over here was the 1936. This is the classroom that we were moving and creating a new glass entrance with awning and vestibule. Next slide. And here are some renderings of the space. So yes, bike parking against the building. The playground will be back over here, so easy to manage. And the plaza with signage. So on the south parking lot, you'll be able to see down the promenade to the main entrance signage. Next slide. And just an alternate view. So these are removable bollards. So vehicles will be able to access the promenade if or plaza if needed. This is the seating wall that we discussed.
How deep is that? It looks deeper than it probably really is.
Yeah, it's sort of a wide angle.
Yeah.
The whole
Yeah,
plaza.
the depth from the street,
How many feet
from the Ballard to the entrance.
Yeah.
How many feet is that? It looks like it's 100 there, but I know it's not.
No.
Probably about 60. Probably about 60.
That sounds right.
All right, thank you.
Next slide. Just a view from the alternate side. Next slide. Just some details of construction of the awning, which is really the major aspect of the new construction. Trying to minimize its depth or the depth profile as best as possible. And all the existing cornices, it's just going to be repair the existing wood where needed and repaint. We will reuse all the integral gutters, but we will be replacing all the downspouts and, you know, making the roof function the way a roof should. Okay, next slide. And the dumpster enclosure will just be a, you know, pre-manufactured aluminum enclosure. Trying to make it, you know, be as discreet as possible. Slide. Is that last one? So if you go to the other set, Brian can present some of the aspects for the civil site.
Would you see that? For the record, Brian Panico with Cole Civil Survey, project engineer. So this first slide is just the survey of the piece, just to kind of make it a little bit easier to understand. The property line actually comes up and then on an angle. So this portion of the site is all part of the Academy School. And then these are the existing municipal buildings that were being discussed. The reason it's all kind of one big piece with these other, the other application with everything else is because our new parking lot falls, as Brian was describing. Here's the basketball court, jungle gym. There's some parking lot in throughout all these buildings, not very formalized currently. But so our goal was to
Understatement.
was to make it look, you know, make it much more formal and much work a lot better. Go to the next slide. So this is an overall of the entire site again. So again, existing building, the actual septic tanks, pump chambers and everything for the school building and the addition are actually inside of that courtyard. So it then is pumped out and the existing septic fields are in this location under this baseball field. So in the redesign of this, we're actually bringing out of the basement, pump chamber in the basement, pump up. And it actually pumps all the way up to new fields in the outfield of those baseball fields. That is about 576, I believe it was, feet of septic system. And that's what's needed for that, the size of this project. So to kind of carry that through in our discussion about the parking lots and everything. So we do have a request to reduce the total parking. On site currently, we are showing 160 spaces, roughly. I say roughly because there is some on-street parking. None of it's actually delineated. But if you take into account the length of that and 20-foot, 25-foot spaces, give or take, there's about 160 spaces shown, where we would need about 236. So could you put 236 parking spaces on this site? Absolutely. You could lose a baseball field. You could take up a bunch of grass. Will they ever need 236 parking spaces? Unlikely. And simply because when we actually looked at the programming of the building, frequency of uses, the uses on site overall, we're talking about the total capacity of the building being able to support that total number of people. But there's a lot of offices in there that are kind of daily use, and that's maybe 25 employees at the most. There's maybe 20 employees in those other buildings, as was mentioned. Some of those other building services are actually moving into this building, so there will have to be a replacement for that in those buildings. And then really we're looking at this being used for, when we at least calculate like for the septic system and the sizing of all that, day campers, they obviously don't drive themselves to day camp. They're dropped off, so we don't need necessarily parking for all of them. And then event space as well. So if they do have an event here, it's infrequent, obviously, but there's the space for it. That is a use that's going to be happening at a different time, and that's why we're looking at that reduction. So we feel that the 160 parking spaces kind of surrounding the whole complex is adequate for the use. And then just to note as well, there is St. Margaret's Church parking lot. I'm sure if the town wanted to request because of some huge event to use some of that parking, that's actually literally right here. There's well over 100 spaces. And then there are other neighbors, also another church with a very large parking lot on the other side.
Are you counting the spaces that are on the north side?
Correct. So we basically said everything on the town-owned property in this whole complex.
Yeah.
total number of spaces.
The senior center parking is not counted.
Not-
That's across
Right,
the
it's not
street,
included.
but
But it's an
that's,
option.
It's there.
that doesn't require any type of
Well,
improvement.
But there's parking also right at the end of that north end.
Yeah.
Again, and
On
there's
the same side of the street.
Same side of the
That's included.
street, more parking, we didn't include that. So literally, when we talk about the included parking, we're talking about our new parking lot in here, the existing parking lots out in front to the south, and then the existing parking lot to the north and along the frontage of the property that has on-street parking. So we didn't include, any additional on-street parking, any other place.
You're including Academy or School Street in your parking calculation?
For the total of 160 spaces.
Along the length of,
Along the length of Academy,
Right in the, oh,
like in through, through this side parallel parking.
and how many spaces did you
Um,
allocate to that?
Is that part of the school property?
I think it was about 20 or so.
It's on-street parking
on-street.
within the town
So
right.
it's not really part of this.
It's not on the property.
It's not on the
No.
complex, it's just,
Is the parking lot currently on the south side, the front of the building, is that going to change at all, that configuration? Because there's multi-use there, obviously. I'm just thinking, you reduce your parking spaces, I can see, we think that, but you got a farmer's market Friday, all the places, you got them gone.
On
You got
School
kids
Street.
being picked up and there's nowhere for parents to park to pick them up, that kind of stuff, so
so
it's once a week for. whatever.
you're talking about in this parking area?
yeah.
So we're talking about, again, we're talking about all of this parking, the new proposed parking lot that we're doing, and this. So I would say that it's a similar situation that the once a month that you have that farmer's market,
Once a week.
Once a
or
week.
once a week that you do that,
For 6 months.
that you do that, it would just have to be something that's taken into account with the town, like, okay, let's not have
Programming.
an event that needs 150 parking spaces on the same day as something like that.
How many on-site parking spaces are part of the new parking lot?
So that new parking lot has 56 spaces, and there are 33 spaces
To the north?
to the north.
I think the waiver number, or that reduction
The 76
number
would
should
be
account for,
all of that.
that's what's provided on the site, and then the rest is the reduction because of adjacent, that offsite.
Just from a point of reference from my perspective, the 76 parking spots that would be lost. If you had an overlay, where would they go?
You're talking if we
Where
had
were
to,
they originally supposed to be? I'm assuming the original approval had those in there because you're asking for us
There's
to
no
reduction.
No.
No.
No, there's, the way the regulation is written is 8.2 allows for the applicant to request a reduction. Whether there are shared parking arrangements on adjacent properties, you went through that on Boston Post Road with cross easements, or for example, in the downtown area, on-street parking available or municipal lots. So that there are findings that the commission needs to make in order to grant that reduction in the required parking spaces. All I was trying to clarify was how many spaces are on site versus what's, so the total number of provided on site should be, I think should reflect what's on the property, and then the excess is off.
Here in that parking area right in the, I guess, on the Boston Post Road, between the Boston Post Road and Academy School is not considered on-site?
Correct.
Okay.
yeah, because the property line actually runs right along that sidewalk adjacent to the parking lot.
Brian, you said it's 33 on the north parking lot? Is that what?
Correct.
They
Okay.
can't use it in their calculations.
It's available parking, it just shouldn't be calculated.
I see.
That's all.
And so again, I'll go back just so we can kind of clarify too, some of the programming that we discussed, like sizing septic system. And Brian, chime in and let me know if any of this has changed or if I'm incorrect. But we basically had the assumption based on all the discussions with staff on what was going in here and what their needs were going to be. There's about 25 office building employees that would utilize this building. maximum. Again, I use these all as maximums because when we're talking about sizing the septic system, we're using a maximum. 50 summer campers, 300 people, short-term use. So that's people maybe stopping by, coming in and out. So not 300 people at the same time, maybe all throughout the day. And then 100 person kitchen, not to be used daily, but that kitchen could potentially service 100 people. And so our thought process, again, not going to be utilizing the kitchen for an event type of situation at the same time as camping, probably office, any of those types of things. But, and again, 100 person kitchen doesn't necessarily mean 100 cars. But we feel that, at least with the on-site parking, having 80 or so, 90 or so spaces would likely be enough. In this case, again, we have 56 in that central parking lot, 33 and to the north of the northern end of the baseball fields. So that kind of goes through all of the parking portion of it. With that parking lot and with some of the increase in pervious surface, what we did was we did basically an entirely LID, low impact design drainage system. We have and actually, if you want to go to the next slide, maybe for me. We have a small infiltration basin in this location. So portions of this parking lot water coming down, as well as some of the water we've directed into swales off of the northern portion where the septic system is, are all directed into that basin. The outlet control structure on that basin is elevated. So we're basically forcing as much of that water to infiltrate as possible. And it's the same situation for the central parking lot, that rain garden in the center of the parking lot. All of the edges of the parking lot have the pre-treatment filter strips, catching solids, catching sediment before they enter into the basins or the rain garden. And then a slightly elevated structure so that we're trying to force as much of that water to infiltrate as possible. Once it gets into that structure, in either case, it's all directed to an underground system here. Those are 24-inch concrete gallery units stacked underneath the parking lot. So again, infiltrating all the much water as we possibly can. And it does overflow back to the existing system and meeting house. I think on this plan, it's not shown. We have later iteration of showing all of the downspout roof leader connections. Basically, as they come down throughout the building, they were tying into the existing catch basins throughout. We're just proposing to basically repipe and fix those because most of them are in rough shape if they're even still functioning. So those will all be replaced as well. And then we do have a central basically overflow line that's going to come out of where that courtyard area is and tie into that system as well. Next slide. I think that pretty much sums up all of our stormwater design and the septic system design. Or if there's any questions, we'd be happy to.
With the septic system design, we have approval from both the local health department and the state. So everyone's comfortable with what we're providing.
Thank you. Any questions?
I didn't hear you mention anything about the HVAC, if there is one, any electrical upgrades?
Yes, the whole HVAC system and electrical systems will be new. All the HVAC equipment will be located on the roof in the screened-in area.
Right.
But it'll be a fully new system. It'll be new radiators, new ventilation air, new VRF for cooling, and all new electrical services.
And at this time, there's no consideration for solar, right?
We were not directed to proceed that direction.
For geothermal.
Or geothermal.
We investigated that. It was cost prohibitive.
I know.
Understood.
Thanks. Any questions?
I have a question. In the regulations require a detailed statement of use, but I didn't see it in the submission. Do we have that? It kind of helps me with all
Sorry,
the-
what was the statement?
A detailed statement of use, 30.5.2A for the downtown district. I couldn't find it in the packet. I was doing it one, but it wasn't in the packet, so. Like to see that. Also, there's a statement required regarding the environmental compatibility of the project.
Believe I provided-
30.5.2.h. If you're not aware of this, that was not in the packet either. And then the question I had, the reason I brought that one up, is in the packet, there's a statement saying that abating of hazardous materials will be done as needed. I don't know what as needed means. I don't know anything. I heard there's asbestos and other issues with the building. So if we get an explanation what abating the hazardous materials as needed means.
So if it's disturbed, that means we will be abating it. Some of it will be encapsulated.
Okay.
So it'll be still remain present in the building, but it will not be a hazard. We do have Fuss and O'Neill working with us for the environmental.
Okay, and then I guess the question would then be for the material which is encapsulated, it would be in such an area that in the future we would not it would not be anticipated, we would have to cut into it. It's not a future kicking the can down the road situation.
Correct.
Okay, all right, so that would be in the environmental compatibility, I would think.
There is an environmental compatibility statement in the application.
In the packet?
It's attached to the application, so it says application. And that's in that was a letter from
Was it okay?
Brian Park.
And I don't.
There's a historical,
I think the statement of use, it may have been labeled narrative.
okay.
I can't remember either.
Aaron, oh, you're looking.
I'm just
All
scrolling
right,
through
maybe I
rather than.
misinterpreted what environmental compatibility means. That's just talking about how the place is gonna be made to kind of work well.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was environmental, like
Yeah, I'm thinking environmental.
sustainability, or if it was
Asbestos,
environmental.
someone's gotta take
Yes.
care of it.
So that, some of that's under the building code, I believe. We did, from, at least the town did obtain a brownfields assessment grant to, and that was up to $200,000. And so that was used to do environmental assessment of the property, phase 1 and 2, as well as additional monitoring and testing around some underground storage tanks and well radius, assessment and some water, groundwater monitoring. And that also did include, there's a hazardous building materials report. And I know that the committee has gone and Brian, I'm sure you or Tom can speak to that. The additional exploratory, demolition that was done just recently as part of the design process to determine what needs to be done, what can be covered, what can be refinished, all to that nature.
If
okay.
I could, if you'd like, I could explain a little bit more about the environmental elements on the site.
Yes, please.
So on the exterior of the site, the environmental reports identified some waterproofing on the existing foundations. If the foundations were going to be removed, if the building was going to be demolished, those would have to be removed. But because the building's going to remain in place, those foundations, that mastic will stay in place and won't be disturbed, except where we're renovating the building, those foundations will be removed and that mastic will be removed. There's an oil tank on the southeast side of the site. That oil tank will be removed was removed, and there was some soil there that was found to be, there were small amounts of contamination. That contamination was localized, but there was groundwater present in that area. So monitoring wells were put in that area, and we monitored it for I don't remember the exact time frame. I believe it was 30 or 60 days. There was no evidence of any. Oh, excuse me. There was no evidence of any movement of that material. That material will be removed. Sorry, that's me letting the dogs out. And...
Quite all right.
Might be getting sicker sometimes.
Well, they can chill off a little bit out there now. Inside the building, as Aaron mentioned, we did a pretty detailed exploratory demolition to find out where the hazardous materials are. There's a lot of typical examples of hazardous materials or asbestos pipe wrap. All of that is normally found in buildings of this vintage. All of that, which is easily accessible, will be removed. Some of the interior finishes have glue dabs or elements that have asbestos in them. As we remove those to put new flooring down, we will take that out and abate it. This is a historic restoration project, so there are a lot of elements in the building that are going to stay, like the classic tin ceilings, some of the existing millwork, which has been there for, since the building was original. So some of that millwork and some of those tin ceilings have, let's say, glue fasteners that might contain hazardous materials that will stay behind those elements. So they'll stay in the building, but they can't be reached. Additionally, what's typical of buildings of this nature is the plaster has asbestos-containing materials within the plaster. It's encapsulated within the plaster, so it's not friable, meaning you can't get it, you can't breathe it in. So what's going to happen in the building is wherever the plaster has deteriorated and it's become sort of mealy, that will all be removed under containment, and then it'll be replaced with standard drywall assemblies. And then where it's intact and in good shape, it'll be sealed and then painted. And that's fairly typical for buildings of this nature. So the idea that most of the materials in the building will be abated, some of it will remain behind existing assemblies and won't be, and they'll be protected or quote unquote encapsulated so that they're not a danger to anybody using the building.
Great, thank you. I didn't hear you mention anything about lead paint considerations. Is that a factor?
There is some lead paint in the building. In some places it will be removed, and in some places where it's up out of touch, it will be encapsulated. We have carried costs in our budgeting and bidding process to provide special sealant. To be honest, I don't understand the technical nature of it, but it's like an epoxy coating which is applied over the lead paint so that it can't be chipped or had access to. It's almost like a primer, and then you put a new paint finish over it.
Thank you. That helps. The other question I have is, was the traffic study done with respect to the impact on the surrounding area, especially since it's going to change dramatically? It's not being used now, so that would help me understand parking space needs.
Yes, there was. Can you?
Not in the packet.
It was not in the packet?
No. No, neither is, and Aaron, I looked, I don't see the statement of use. I couldn't find it.
I don't
Yeah,
have statement of
understanding
use.
some of the,
I have the environmental compatibility statement.
yeah, that's in there. Not what I expected.
And a historic statement.
Right.
So a traffic study was done by Hesketh, engineer Scott Hesketh. You don't have it, so you don't have to take my word for it. We will submit the traffic study. The traffic study indicated no significant impact on the adjacent roadways. I think, in simple terms, well, you'll have to read the traffic study. We have to submit that to you, but in simple terms, the building is being used as it originally was being used. Classrooms are being used as classrooms. The gymnasium is being used as gymnasium. The recital hall is being used as a recital hall. So we're not changing the nature of the main assembly spaces in the building. The school had administrative functions originally. We're incorporating the administrative functions of the youth and family services. So in the big picture, the overall use of the main assembly spaces is not being used any differently than the original building spaces would have been used.
If I could elaborate on that as well, the other thing we talked about, or that last public hearing pretty extensively, was the peak use, peak hour, peak everything. So again, we're talking about your peak hour trips would be these employees maybe coming to work, but your peak hour is likely not going to be any of these large events.
So we need that.
Yep, and we'll supply that.
I assume that'll be in the statement of use and the traffic study, all that, it'll allow us to get I wasn't there.
Better
But
picture.
I needed part of this record. So we can make the assessment.
Any other questions?
That's all I have.
No other questions from commissioners? How about public questions?
Yeah, my name is Tom Lee, and I live at 79 Bradley Road, and I'm really excited about the plan you put together. I mean, it really looks great. The other thing I'd mention, I'm vice president of the Deacon John Grape House that's right across the street, and we're really pleased to see that things are moving forward on this, because with the building derelict, there's a lot of vandalism that's occurring, and we're always worried about that vandalism carrying over to the Grape House, okay? So I'm very pleased to see that you have a very, a very acceptable plan that's coming together, and that the town is actually going to move ahead with this. So what's the timetable on all this?
On what?
When can you guys start? Yeah.
Thanks for your comments, though.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm Jennifer Lee, and I live at 17 Bradley. And so I do want to correct, it's not 79 Bradley.
Oh, yeah, that's our old address.
That was
So
our
you
old
live together.
We're together.
We know each other.
We know each other.
Yeah.
79 Dream Lake was where we did live.
Okay, thanks.
So there you go.
Thank you.
But the one thing that quick comment is Bradley, if there's parking on both sides, it has only enough room for one car to go through.
You're talking about Academy.
Academy,
Yeah.
sorry, sorry.
Yeah.
See, we correct
Good thing
each
you-
other.
Yeah.
And this is gonna be recorded for everybody in the town.
You can watch it as many times as you want.
One more time, what's your address?
You need to have a little humor, right?
Yeah.
So there you go. So yes, Academy Street, if you're counting, you were talking about parking places.
Right.
And if you're doing that, please don't count on both sides of the road. That's all.
Got it. Thanks.
That's
I'm Art Simons, Bartlett Drive. I'm also on the Youth Services Board, just for information, so you know that. But I'm not here in an official capacity in that my role is officially on that board. I don't want to belabor things. I can look up in the drawing anyway. I know you guys spend a lot of time talking about parking and playgrounds. I assume the parking, the playgrounds, I think you may have said this, are not interfering with the baseball fields at all. Okay, and I can look at the other stuff that you went over that I didn't get because I'm good at this stuff.
Oddly enough, the soil conditions underneath the baseball field are not suitable for the septic, so they're as far in the outfield as you can get. Better for everything that way.
And it actually ends up leveling out the outfield. It dips off a little bit and then comes back up.
It dipped off in 1968 too.
Yep, so now it's a little more level throughout the baseball field.
Can I also say, Artie, that full disclosure, I think you and I both attended a Catholic
Right.
school.
And they're 54 years ago.
Sixth,
let's
eighth
count.
grade.
And it wasn't that great 54 years ago. Sorry.
Full disclosure. Okay, any other questions, comments? Well, we're discussing the issues you raised. Bob, do you want to wait until you get more information?
Yeah.
So I think
I'd
that
like to
we need
understand more so we can.
a motion to continue the hearing to January 2nd.
Yes.
Can I have a motion for that? Oh, you wanted to-
Madam Chair.
I'm sorry.
Can we just confirm that the applicant is available on January
right.
2nd?
Right.
Yes, I
To
do.
Come back.
Tom didn't jump to that one.
In the meantime, provide us with the information that seemed to be missing from
Thank
this,
you.
this application packet. That'd be great. Thank you. We appreciate that. Okay, so
Need a motion.
motion,
I'll
second,
second.
any further discussion about continuing to January 2nd? All in favor? Okay, thank you. Thank you all. I know it's been a long,
Thank you,
long
Tom. Thanks,
process.
Brian.
Okay, we have a pending application, 24-45, 341 Opening Hill Road, and I need to have a motion to schedule public
I
hearing.
know you're
for January
parking
6th.
is all on. Oh, sorry.
That would be January 16th.
January 16th, yeah,
That's the hearing.
yeah. Second. Mike Langdon, any further discussion on favor? Okay, great. And then we have receipt of 131 Cottage Road. Karen, is anybody here to? Oh,
Yes.
yes, great.
Carla Lindquist of Hope Partnership and Dave Wagner, the design architect, are here to present the modifications and answer any questions. I also did provide a brief, I'm just going to
Yeah, we're just gonna
close
shut
the door because it's just a little loud in the hallway. Hold on one second. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. This is a site plan modification application that's before you for some fairly minor site revisions to the original approval for this affordable housing development.
When was that original approval? Karen, do you have a date?
There,
Before our time.
you've had a modification last year, I believe, or was it, I thought it was 23, early 23. It may have been, it was 23, wasn't it, Carla? And
Yeah.
then
It's 23, but our original site plans actually say 2014 on them from the previous owner, so.
Carla, did you want to kind of kick
Yeah,
off?
I can kick it off. So Carla Lindquist, I'm representing Hope Partnership. I'm the executive director there. We are at 99 Durham Road in Madison on the second floor. So we are coming to the end of our construction on Wellington, and the changes that you have in front of you are minor, as Erin mentioned, mostly just having to do with some functionality that changed, and also some utilities and engineering related to the septic. So the most visible change is probably related to the landscaping. The original landscaping that was presented on the site plan that was previously approved had carried forward through previous iterations of the plan. And that plan did change, including the number of units, the typology, going from rentals to going from condos to rentals, in addition to some of the architecture, obviously. And unfortunately, when we went to install that landscaping in the fall, there were a lot of conflicts with utilities and with leaching fields and septic systems. And unfortunately, the root conflict would have been problematic for health and safety for those things. So we went back and updated that plan to reflect the current utility in the ground and the current septic plan that's already installed. The other minor change that's in front of you is there's a section of sidewalk that was behind our community building. When that sidewalk was originally placed, the community building was intended to be a storage and trash and recycling building. And it is now 2 offices and community space that are only accessible from the where that is, and then the other side where the sidewalk is installed. And there are some utilities installed to the rear where we removed the sidewalk. So obviously the sidewalk would have conflicted, and it really would have been a sidewalk to nowhere. There's already sidewalk that brings you around the community building towards the road. And so there's really no reason to go behind there at this point with the change in the functionality for the community building. And then I think the last minor change to note is just that the original site plan had for building E decks, and those were switched to concrete patio, which is just consistent with what's for the other buildings. And the reason for that change is this portion of the site was originally part of the 500-year flood zone, but after getting the map changed, it is no longer, and the concrete patio is a more sustainable option. And so I think, Erin and Dave, that covers all of our 3 changes.
Yeah, the only other change, Carla, was that there were changes to the lighting plan.
Oh, yes, sorry, the lighting plan. Yes, yep. I can speak to that too. So the original lighting plan had bollard lightings for the bollard style lighting for the exterior. And unfortunately, when our the photometrics folks analyzed it, that was not going to throw enough light. And so we had to install a different style of exterior light fixture that would provide adequate coverage on the site.
Pole lights.
Yes, pole lights.
Which is what led to some of the modifications in the islands of plantings where there were taller trees versus lower shrub style. And I don't know, Carla, are you or Dave going to speak to your conversations with ACA? And
sure, I can sort of summarize. So we went in front of ACA last week, and they were quite frankly not terribly they didn't have much feedback on the landscaping. Most of our conversation ended up centering around the Meg's house. As folks know, there's a historic home on the property that was converted to 4 units, and some of the new installations related to things like HVAC and a new window, and there were a couple of storm doors on there, and ACA really did not care for the fact that some of those things were white, and so we're in the process of painting the things that they wanted us to paint, and then the storm doors were removed at their request.
And this, at their suggestion and staff's, there was a recommendation to have the landscape plan updated to try and incorporate some of the the shade trees that were initially called for, if they can't be in locations that were near the septic system, to try and put them in other locations. And so this plan before you does show both existing and proposed shade trees. And some of those were added where our initial proposal did not have them in between some of the buildings and on the fringe edge. here around the parking lot, and those have been added. So the applicant has made an effort to add as many trees where feasible to get those back onto the site.
Yes, that's the brief we essentially gave to the design team as we said, please add back as much as you can without conflicting with any of the health and safety issues.
So to formalize that really for your approval and to sync, there were enough changes to the site plan to require a return to the commission. We did have for our final inspection, you know, the Hope is looking to have residents occupy as early as the new year here. And so in an effort to kind of move this along, we have gone out and done final inspections as the various other agencies have done as well. We've provided them with punch list of items. Some of those items, such as the house and things like that, have been taken care of now. Other items will be taken care of in the warmer weather. And so those will be secured with a financial guarantee. So, which is standard procedure. And so we'll look to have those outstanding items completed early spring.
Great, thanks. Thank you, Carla.
Thank you.
We'll have, Carla, how many affordable units?
So there's
completed.
So there's going to be 27 new, there are 27 new units that join the 4 that existed. There will be a total of my math skills are really off right now. I'm sorry. I'm a tired mom. There's going to be a total of 24 affordable units, and they're affordable at thresholds of 25%, 50%, and 60% of area median income.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Could I have a motion to approve then?
Motion to approve.
And we have, thanks for your staff comments and a draft.
Yes, just one recommended condition is that, you know, as there's any disturbance of soil, to have adequate ENS controls as needed till the site is stabilized.
Yeah, I had another one.
Do we need to read it?
Do we need to read it then?
Can I read it?
That's fine. You can reference it if you'd like. You can read it if we're done.
I mean, voted that the following draft resolution is offered. Voted that the Madison Planning and Zoning Commission approve application 24-47, 131 Cottage Road, map 31, lot 25, owner applicant, the Caleb Foundation, site plan review modification for exterior modifications of building, landscaping, and site improvements as shown in application documents with the following condition. Number 1, at all times during site work and until soil areas are stabilized, the applicant shall install and maintain erosion and sediment control measures such as fabric filter fence, staked hay bales, or other measures deemed necessary by the agency's agent to prevent erosion and sedimentation impacts to the wetlands and watercourses. In the event that changes to the approved plans are required as a result of other agency permitting to support the proposed activity, the Madison Planning and Zoning Commission reserves the right to review said changes and may require modifications of this approval. This approval is made based upon the findings that the proposed use is a permitted use in the district and that the standards, prerequisites, and conditions specified by the regulations have been met. The effective date of this approval is January 3rd, 2025. Yeah,
Typo.
I'm not there yet,
We're
apparently.
not there yet, but.
Not in
2025 is
25
okay.
yet.
Thank you, John. Can I have a second? Paul Bernhardt. And any further discussion? All in favor to approve? Great.
Great
thank you.
work, Carla. We need it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Carla. Thanks, Dave.
Happy holidays.
You too.
Thank you, everybody. Happy holidays.
Thanks. Okay, next we have approval of minutes, and I hand it over to Secretary John Husta.
Sure, on November 21st, 2024, our Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, our members present, Pogda, Downs, Susan, Morgan, Connor, Beckenball, Reinhardt, Rubin, and Snow. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Approved.
And a second.
I'll second.
Any edits? comments?
Good.
Terry was right on target. Vote to approve? Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yay, Terry. She's here.
Oh,
Yay.
perfect.
Okay, so on to remarks. I have none other than to say have a great holidays, everybody. And relax and refresh. And Erin, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I'll second that.
We'll second that. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second by Bob Hart. All in favor? Thank you all.